Picture this, the 21st century. Out of nowhere, shimmering gates just start popping up all over the globe, connecting our world to twisted labyrinths known as catacombs. And inside, they're swarming with monsters they literally call enemies. If a catacomb is left unchecked for too long, those very same monsters start pouring into our reality. At first, humanity was getting absolutely steamrolled, completely defenseless. But then, a glimmer of hope was discovered. If certain gifted individuals could just survive inside a catacomb for a specific amount of time, they would awaken incredible powers called skills. Armed with these newfound abilities, humanity finally began to fight back. These skill-wielding heroes who plunged into the catacombs to conquer them earned a new title, Dungeon Divers. Flash forward to a classroom where a professor is lecturing on how players and dungeon divers have become the most idolized professions on the planet. But one student is completely zoned out, sighing. Meet Sota Sasaki, our protagonist. Both his parents were legendary divers, but his father was killed in the line of duty. As for his mom, well, Sota still dreamed of becoming a player himself, a top-tier dungeon diver who could make them proud. His daydream is violently interrupted when a grotesque, shadow-like creature materializes outside the window, its jaws unhinging as if it's about to devour him whole. The sight sends a shockwave of terror through Sota, and he lets out a piercing scream. His teacher and classmates just stare while some kids whisper behind his back. This clearly isn't the first time this has happened. He scrambles backward, toppling out of his chair in pure panic. The terrifying truth is, no one else can see the shadow monster. This started happening a while ago. He began seeing a world hidden from everyone else. It's a rare ability called spirit sight, the power to perceive spirits. Back when Sota's dad was still around, they took him to a catacomb to try and awaken his skills. But the attempt was a total failure. He was just too paralyzed by terror to focus. Our boy held on for hours, enduring the horror. But in the end, nothing awakened. He couldn't become a hero like his father, a man celebrated as the strongest flame master. Just then, a classmate leans over asking if he's all right. The guy offers a hand and helps Sota up an act of kindness our MC definitely wasn't expecting from him. This is Takuto Saiga, his childhood friend. And unlike Sota, he's a fully awakened player, a real dungeon diver. Takuto pulls him to his feet and leans in close, whispering, "After school, the usual spot." The words make a cold dread wash over Sota. Other students watch on, gushing about what a great guy Takuto is, but the terrified look on Sota's face tells a much darker story. Later, Sota drags himself to the usual place, only to be welcomed with a fist to the jaw. "You're late, Mr. Self-proclaimed spirit medium." As it turns out, Takuto is no friend. He's a vicious bully who now sneers down at Sota, who is already sprawled on the ground. Takuto yanks Sota up by his collar, demanding money. Sota reluctantly hands over what little cash he has. Is this it? Seeing that Takuto is far from satisfied, Sota stammers that he can't spare any more. He desperately needs it for his mother's mounting medical bills. For his honesty, Takuto delivers a savage kick telling him to quit wasting money on his mother, who fell into a coma during a catacomb expedition. He then starts mocking his dead father, sneering that he lost his mind and died like trash in the end. The bully just keeps going, spitting that both of Sota's parents were completely useless. Takuto then cruelly suggests Sota is just pretending to have spirit sight, to hide the fact that he's a powerless failure. The words hit like daggers and tears well up in Sota's eyes. What a weakling. He even asks why someone from a family of failures was ever even born. But then Takuto catches the look in Sota's eyes, a flicker of defiance. Enraged, our MC struggles to his feet, pure rage burning away the tears. "Know your place, you incompetent trash," Takuto snarls, before launching into another brutal beating. As the punches and kicks land, a painful truth slams into Sota. It's true that his dad changed after his mom collapsed. He became obsessed, throwing himself into the catacombs, as if he were possessed, and he died before they ever had a chance to talk it out. But in Sota's heart, he knows there had to be a reason. Lying there helpless and broken on the ground, Sota is hauled up by his shirt. "Looks like I'll have to train you myself," Takuto says with a sadistic grin, "in place of your useless parents." In that exact moment, a shimmering green gate materializes right in front of them. Sota is stunned. It's a real gate. "Found it yesterday," Takuto boasts. "This is where your training begins." One of Takuto's cronies nervously asks if this is actually a good idea, but Takuto just scoffs, telling him that if he has any complaints, he can just stay behind. He's oozing with confidence about this green gate, calling it measly since his crew has already cleared much tougher purple gates. But for Sota, this moment is pure, undiluted terror. His fists clench tight. Takuto aims his bow not at a monster, but right at Sota's head as a threat. The arrow grazes his cheek, drawing blood. "Stop your whining," he warns, "or the next arrow is going straight to your mother." Sota's teeth grind in fury, but he's completely cornered. He has no choice but to obey. The whole group steps into the green gate and enters the catacomb. As always, the swirling spirits are immediately visible only to Sota, and the sight alone is enough to terrify him. Out of the darkness, a fireball suddenly materializes and hurtles straight toward him. He's frozen in place with no idea what to do. All our MC can do is brace for the searing impact. But then Takuto kicks the fireball away and yells at Soda to stop being such a wimp, mocking him as the so-called son of the strongest flame master. He screams that he's sick of Soda's pathetic excuses and that there's no meaning to him even being alive, and he means every single word of it. An endless stream of harsh insults pours from Takuto's mouth, telling Soda exactly what a low-life scumbag his father was, even when his own wife was on her deathbed. Soto's dad chased glory in the Catacombs, a pointless crusade that got him killed, and all Soto ever heard was what a terrible father he was. A man who craved status more than his own family. That's when Takuto drops the most toxic suggestion ever: if Soto just died in the catacomb, maybe he'd finally get that father-son reunion. Just die here, the clown actually said. The words hit like a punch to the gut, and Soto breaks down, convinced the whole world is laughing at him, that even the ghosts are getting in on the joke. But, were they really mocking him? Soto freezes. He whips his head around, wondering if the crackling flames just spoke. Then it whispers, "Strain your eyes, and listen." Soto just stares, absolutely floored. He wasn't hallucinating. That voice was real. Takuto snaps at him, asking what's so interesting, and then he just stops. A fountain of blood erupts from his mouth. Takuto had been impaled from behind. His lackeys stare in pure horror as their boss is suddenly wrapped in silk and hoisted into the darkness. It was a freaking giant spider. One of the goons stammers, asking if that's the Queen Spider, the max difficulty area boss from a red gate. The stories say she drags the tastiest-looking prey back to her lair, laying eggs inside them while they're still alive. A truly nightmarish way to go. And any leftovers, those become chow for her babies. Takuto's crew didn't hesitate. They booked it, leaving Soto and the mysterious fireball completely behind. And just like that, Soto is swarmed by monsters. A spiderling crawls right up to him, eyeing him like a walking Happy Meal. So this is how it ends, our hero thinks, his heart pounding. But a fire inside him screamed that he didn't want to die. The fireball spirit spoke once more, its voice echoing in his mind. Don't you dare give up. Sharpen your senses. Feel it. In the state you're in, you should be able to understand. Sato had no clue what it meant, but he clung to that shred of hope. Suddenly a brilliant light flashes and a system window pops up. Stay duration has exceeded the designated threshold. Congratulations. A skill has been awakened. Thanks to the Catacombs' unique blessing, the new skill is called Legacy Anomaly from Wandering Souls. Wandering Souls. What even are they, Soto wonders? And then the fireball erupts, growing to an immense size. Our MC is just speechless. The inferno then shifts, taking the form of his own father, arm outstretched. Soto instinctively reaches for his dad's hand, as the spiders let out a hellish screech, closing in on them. Their fingers touch, and a massive explosion of fire erupts from the point of contact, incinerating every last spider in the blast. Soto feels a surge of raw, untamed power coursing through him, flames licking at his skin. The awakened skill Legacy Anomaly lets him literally inherit the powers of wandering spirits. The flame skill his dad used to have is now his. He can't wrap his head around it. Soto actually has a skill now. Not just that he's officially a dungeon diver. The wave of emotion is so intense that the fireball spirit chimes in. Yo, probably not the best time for a feels trip. And it was right. A fresh swarm of monsters was already charging straight for him. Soto panics, having zero idea what to do with his new power. The fiery spirit snaps at him, telling him to get a grip, keep his senses sharp, and just focus on seeing it. Soto concentrates, and his vision ignites, his eyes glowing like embers. He glares at the spider, and sees a premonition it's about to spit acid. He dodges just in time. The fireball explains that Soto just witnessed the creature's soul surge. Turns out every bit of power used by players, monsters, and divers alike comes directly from the soul. The fact that he saw the spider focusing energy into its mouth, that's the anomaly skill at work. Another spider makes its move on Soto. It barrels toward him like a freight train. He watches its every move, anticipating the attack. It gathers energy in its jaws. But before it can even fire, Soto slams a kick right into its face. He's stunned that he just dodged and countered so easily. He follows up, leaping and driving his fist into the monster. Soto can't believe it. He's actually fighting. The fireball explains that because he's now hosting his father's soul, he's tapping into all of his dad's skills and combat experience. It feels like his old man is standing right behind him, guiding his every move. This insane new power brings tears to his eyes, but this time they're tears of confidence. He was ready to fight. Fueled by this new strength, he decks one monster. Another one pops up behind him, charging up a venomous spit. But he pivots out of the way without even thinking. Soto's eyes are still blazing. He focuses, studying his enemy's movements. Then something clicks. He sees it. Our MC asks the flame, Did I just see the spider's weak point? Sato launches himself forward and slams his fist into that exact spot. He watches, as the spider convulses, dealt a mortal blow. A trail of fire now smolders on the wound he left behind. But before he can celebrate, another spider appears directly in front of him. It takes one look, hesitates, and then turns tail and runs. The little coward was trying to escape, but Sato was having none of it. He channels raw energy into his arm and unleashes his new skill. Prison Blaze. The fleeing spider is engulfed in a cage of fire, taking a direct hit. It was finally over. He lets out a shaky breath. It was exhausting, but not half bad for your first time, Flamey comments. The spirit then tells Soto it's time to communicate with his father's soul and listen to his final regrets. He has to resolve that lingering business before he can fully inherit his father's power. That, it explains, is the true nature of the anomaly skill. Soto asks how the fireball knows so much, but it just dodges the question. Sota had been seeing the world through a blurry spiritual lens, only half perceiving souls. But with his skills now fully online, he could finally hold a real conversation with one. And there, materializing before him, was the soul of his father, beaming with pride. His dad's voice cut through the silence, saying it had been way too long. Our MC was completely frozen. He opened his mouth to speak, but his dad jumped in first, dropping a bombshell of an apology. Sota didn't pull any punches. He unleashed on him, demanding to know why he abandoned his mom. His father's answer shattered Sota's entire reality he left to save her. The words hit Sota like a truck. His mom had collapsed from the queen spider's poison, and the only antidote required its fangs. That's why he'd been diving headfirst into every crimson portal he could find. A frantic, desperate race against time. He thought he finally had it, but it was all a trap. Sota was utterly speechless. His dad went on admitting he'd been a reckless fool, ignoring everyone, and bulldozing his way through one deadly raid after another. But even hearing the truth, the rage inside Sota didn't just vanish. It twisted. He was furious that his dad tried to carry that impossible burden all by himself when they were supposed to be a family. Sota knew he wouldn't have been much help, but he could have at least talked to him. The weight of those words left his dad's spirit silent. With a new fire in his eyes, Sota declared that he would be the one to save his mom. He swore he would climb higher than even the world's greatest player, his own father. He vowed no one else would die on his watch, and that he would become the ultimate player diver. A wave of pure pride washed over his dad's face, seeing the boy before him finally speaking like a man. He pulled Sota into a spectral hug, telling him just how proud he was, how much he loved him, leaving no words left unsaid, no room for regret. Sota's dad urged him to become stronger than anyone imaginable, and just like that, his form began to dissolve, fading away into shimmering bubbles of light. His last words echoed, "I'm counting on you. Take care of your mom." Sota could only whisper a thank you from the very depths of his soul. Then right on cue, a blue system window flickered into existence just like the first time he got his skill. The conversation had finally cleared Keiichiro Suzaki's lingering regrets. The skill was now completely his radiant blaze, the absolute power to manipulate flames at will. And then he was alone again as tears of overwhelming joy and relief streamed down his face. The fireball spirit let out a crackling laugh. "Surpassing your old man? That's one hell of a bold claim, kid. But I gotta admit," it continued, "I was dead wrong about you. I seriously thought you were some spineless wimp." Sota tried to thank the spirit for its help, but it just waved him off, totally uninterested in the formal stuff, acting like they were old buddies. That casual vibe sparked Sota's curiosity. He had to ask, "For real though, who are you? Do I know you?" The fire spirit attempted to reply, but its voice suddenly glitched out, becoming a mess of static. Sota couldn't make out a single word. It tried again, but the connection was toast. The voice just kept breaking up like a bad Discord call at the worst possible moment. No matter how hard the fireball tried, the words wouldn't come through. Apparently, whatever it was trying to reveal was being flagged by the system as a bug. The spirit gave up, telling Sota to just call it whatever he wanted for now. "But of course, it's gotta be something cool," it insisted. Sota thought for a moment, then suggested, "How about Tamamo?" The fireball audibly flinched. It absolutely loathed the name and immediately roasted Sota's naming sense. Sota just threw his hands up, saying it couldn't be helped. "Hey, you're the one who said I could call you anything." In the end, the spirit sighed in defeat. Sota had a point, so it looks like the name was sticking. It then sobered up, reminding Sota that they still had a job to finish. Our MC, who was just joking around, snapped to attention. His entire demeanor shifted, his face becoming cold and serious, a master plan already clicking into place in his mind. The fireball had to admit that look was a good fit. As they headed for the Catacombs exit, the spirit told Sota that, if he ever wanted to meet again, all he had to do was return to any catacomb. Our boy finally emerged from the portal. Outside, Takuto's two lackeys were still doubled over, sucking in air after running for their lives. Neither of them could wrap their heads around why a monster like that massive spider would ever spawn inside a freaking green gate. Then the portal behind them began to glow with an intense, terrifying light, forcing them to stumble backward in shock. Rings of energy materialized around it, revealing the horrifying truth. Now they knew. It was an irregular gate, One of Takuto's goons looked completely lost. Gate difficulty was supposed to be simple: red, yellow, purple, blue, and then green at the bottom. The danger level was supposed to be obvious. But a gate with rings, that meant one thing: the difficulty had just been cranked straight to the highest possible tier. Goon number 1's face went pale. "Don't tell me. That was basically a red gate," he stammered. Full-blown panic started to set in. How could they possibly report this to the association? Were they seriously going to confess that they broke in illegally? And to make things worse, they had assaulted a civilian on their way in. One of them muttered that Takuto probably got what he deserved. But after a beat, the other one remembered something awful. Soda was still inside. They figured no one would even look for him. Just another loser vanishing into thin air wouldn't raise any flags. That's when the shimmering green gate cracked open. Soda strolled out cool as a cucumber and dropped a casual, "Sorry for being trash." The lackeys were shook, staring at a version of Soda they didn't recognize. They were scrambling to figure out how he was even breathing. A flicker of flame ignited in Soda's eyes. Goon number 2 was desperate for an explanation, but our MC was busy sizing them up. After the spider monstrosities he'd just fought, these two looked like absolute chumps. The main scumbag immediately started screaming, pinning Takuto's death on him. Even his own partner looked at him like he was insane. Ultimately, the punk decided the easiest way out was to make Soda the fall guy. But Soda was completely over their conversation. Annoyed and running on fumes, he cut them off, demanding to speak with Kotora. Kotora just looked utterly bewildered. The other goon, feeling dissed, got heated and swung a wild punch his way, but Soda didn't even flinch. He moved first, slamming a fist square into the guy's face. The scumbag went airborne before crashing to the ground in a heap. The other guy stood there, frozen, his mind racing. Had Soda really awakened as a dungeon diver? And holy crap, he was insanely powerful. Soda then turned to Kotora, asking for a favor. Drenched in a cold sweat and visibly rattled, Kotora somehow agreed. Together they plunged back into the catacomb. Kotora's gut screamed that they didn't have a prayer against whatever was in there, but Soda started laying out the situation. This was their one shot, a golden opportunity to raid an irregular gate. If they hesitated now, the chance would be gone forever. Our MC was radiating pure determination, completely focused on annihilating the Queen Spider. Kotora was just flabbergasted. It finally clicked that this had been Soda's master plan all along, and he started freaking out, insisting they had to call in backup. Before he could finish, a commanding voice boomed from the shadows. "Hold it right there." Both Soda and Kotora flinched, spinning around in a panic. A hulking, confident man materialized from the darkness like a ghost, completely blocking their path forward. And the look on his face made it crystal clear he wasn't about to let them pass, not while he was drawing breath. Who was this random dude, and what was he doing this deep in the catacomb? Neither Soda nor Kotora had a clue who this guy was, so they asked him straight up. The man just scoffed, refusing to give his name. He sneered that he doesn't introduce himself to sketchy-looking people. Soda tried to explain the situation, but the man just waved him off. He jabbed a finger at Soda, pointing out he was the one they'd found, passed out cold in front of the gate. On top of that, everyone knows catacomb raids require a team of 3. But here were Soda and Kotora, a 2-man crew, which just screamed that something was off. From his tone, it was obvious the guy had all the justification he needed to arrest them right now. He cracked his knuckles, ready to teach these two a lesson they wouldn't forget. As our MC made one last attempt to reason with him, the man's fist tightened and he roared. "I didn't ask you a single question." The stranger lunged, throwing a heavy punch, but Soda slipped right past it. He knew talking was useless, and countered with a vicious uppercut. It didn't even make the guy blink. He just smirked, sarcastically, remarking that Soda had some moves. He activated his skill, Man of Steel. His skin took on a metallic sheen, his body transforming into solid metal. His fists became literal hammers, and he warned Soda that one solid hit would be catastrophic. Soda immediately recognized the terrifying level of power he was facing. He knew if they kept this up, they were toast. So Soda made the only smart move: he turned and bolted. He dipped out, leaving a stunned Kotora behind with the metal man. The stranger bellowed after him, demanding he come back and fight, yelling that this was supposed to be a legendary battle. Kotora, snapping out of his shock, scrambled to follow Soda. The man began hunting them through the tunnels. His voice echoed, taunting them to come out and face him. The two of them were crammed in a dark crevice, knowing a head-on fight was suicide. Not like this. Soda knew his fists would shatter against steel, and using his fire in these cramped tunnels could easily get them both killed. Just then, a wispy green fireball materialized in front of Soda. The spirit instantly recognized their pursuer, that monster, Man of Steel. His name was Tuma. The spirit whispered to Soda that seeing Tuma had awakened its long slumbering soul, and now it was time for revenge. Curious, Soda asked if there was some kind of history between the spirit and Tuma. The spirit was jolted, shocked that Soda could even see it. Soda just calmly confirmed that yes, he could see it perfectly. Seeing a chance, the spirit began its tale. It explained that he and Tuma were ancient, bitter rivals. They had agreed to a final one-on-one duel to settle their feud for good. But unfortunately, the spirit lost. It swore vengeance but died inside this very catacomb before it could get payback. The regret was all-consuming. It couldn't even rest in peace while its rival lived. Seeing the spirit's torment, Soda offered a deal he would help. With a newfound purpose, Soda stepped back out to face Toma. Toma, still overflowing with arrogance, let out a huge laugh, delighted that his prey had finally grown a spine and come out of hiding. Soda roared, his full name Igarashi Toma. The man froze, his cocky expression vanishing. How in the hell could this kid possibly know his name? As Soda reared back for a punch, he muttered a quick apology. In that instant, a crackling spear of green lightning ripped through the air and slammed into Toma. The jolt stunned him, sending him crashing to the floor. As Toma lay there, immobilized, the green fireball spirit phased directly out of Soda's chest. Cackling with victorious glee, the spirit offered Soda its deepest thanks. The ancient grudge had finally been settled. Model. And with that, his chapter here was closed. As Soda offered his farewells, it hit him everyone is shouldering their own private burdens. A blue window materialized before his eyes once again. A new skill, inherited stun. It could unleash a massive jolt of electricity in a flash. Just then, Kotora tracked Soda down, only to see he had already taken Tuma down. Soda had to know, why did Kotora track him down instead of just bailing? Kotora admitted he was still clueless as to why he'd been dragged along on this insane quest. But the truth was, Soda desperately needed Kotora's unique talent. Poison Master. The kid's whole deal was manipulating toxins. Soda knew from experience that Kotora could whip up an antidote for anything, provided he had the right ingredients. He'd seen it with his own eyes. Kotora just wanted to know what Soda needed from him. Our hero laid it all out. He was going to kill the Spider Queen. He needed the Poison Master's help to cure his mom, even clarifying that Kotora wouldn't have to lift a finger in the fight. But he decided to join the battle anyway, with one condition: please save Takuto. Kotora then looked at Soda with genuine gratitude. He explained that Soda had saved his life time and time again, which allowed him to finally awaken his true power. You're my savior. But Soda flat out refused to help Takuto, declaring he would never forgive the guy. However, he gave Kotora an out. He could go rescue Takuto himself, while Soda focused on slaying the Spider Queen. Kotora was stunned into silence. Soda turned away, promising he wouldn't get in his way. A small smile crept across Kotora's face. Suddenly, Tuma jolted awake, snapping out of the stun. The two boys flinched, but Tuma did the last thing they expected. He pulled them into a huge hug. He told them they were about to make him tear up. This bizarre reaction completely threw Soda and Kotora, but hey now, they were a team of 3 in this deadly labyrinth. Tuma complained that Soda should have just explained his plan from the jump, but our MC fired back that Tuma was the one who came in swinging. Without even listening, Tuma offered his strength, but Soda was reluctant. He worried things were about to get way too dangerous. Tuma wouldn't take no for an answer. There was no universe where he wouldn't help. He was doing this because he chose to. And just like that, the ravenous, enraged Queen Spider materialized before them. Perfect timing. There was no escape now. A grin spread across Tuma's face as his fists hardened back into steel. He was ready to throw down alongside Soda and Kotora. In that very instant, the horrifying Spider Queen towered over them, poised to devour them whole. Kotora quickly asked Tuma how deep he'd explored into the catacombs. Tuma had managed to clear out the purple gate zones, but a red gate was a whole different beast. This was without a doubt the greatest trial he'd ever faced, and he wasn't about to hold anything back. Just as Tuma braced himself to become their human shield, Soda suddenly strode forward. He was confronting the monstrous queen all by himself, leaving everyone absolutely floored. His resolve was ironclad. He would crush this beast to avenge his mother and father. The Spider Queen lunged. Soda evaded its strikes with impossible grace. He weaved between its attacks like a phantom who had fought this battle 1,000 times. The queen spat a web and Soda fearlessly leaped right onto it. Tuma and Kotora could only gawk in utter disbelief. This version of Soda was a completely different person, moving like someone who'd already conquered a red gate. But Kotora knew that was impossible. Soda had literally become a diver mere hours ago, yet he moved with the deadly precision of a seasoned warrior. Then without warning, flames erupted from Soda's hands. No shot he can use fire, Tuma stammered. He's been sandbagging this whole time. That was all the motivation Tuma needed. He couldn't let himself be shown up here. His fists transmuted to steel, as his Man of Steel ability flared to life. He drove a punch into one of the spider's colossal legs, pouring every ounce of his strength into the blow, but to his shock, it did nothing. The attack might as well have been a gentle tap. What Tuma was completely oblivious to was the shadow looming over him. The spider's head, armed with lethal fangs, was descending for the final fatal strike. Just as Tuma's life was about to be snuffed out, Soda exploded from the side, slamming his fist into the spider's head. Empowered with his brand new skill, Electric Shock Stun, Emerald Lightning crackled and zapped the spider square in its back, but the queen was insanely durable. The stun barely even phased it. Soda yelled, a new strategy. He'd use fire if Tuma could just keep its attention. Tuma didn't even have to think. It was a flawless plan. He transformed his entire body into solid steel. Tuma threw himself into overdrive, ready to tank whatever the spider could dish out. The queen spider seemed confused, realizing its relentless assault wasn't even scratching him. Tuma taunted the abomination, yelling at it to put some real power into its strikes. He knew his skill was on a timer. Sota needed to end this, and fast. The queen spider's foul maw gaped wide as it dove straight at Tuma. It took the bait completely. As it barreled down on him, Sota launched himself off Tuma's back, his fist a roaring inferno of fire flower flame. He smashed it into one of the creature's legs. The spider queen let out an unholy shriek of pain. As the fire seared its flesh, it scrambled back, proving the flames were its weakness. The trio pressed their advantage. Kotora watched them fight in awe. They might actually pull this off. And that meant it was time for him to save Takuto. Kotora bolted forward when suddenly a single shoe tumbled from the ceiling and landed in front of him. He recognized it instantly. It was Takuto's. The queen spider's fangs were already sinking into Takuto's lower half, and a raw, horrified scream ripped from Kotora's throat. He charged forward, channeling all his power for a desperate strike, but the spider simply lifted a massive leg and plunged it downward. The razor-sharp point was mere inches from ending Kotora when Tuma threw himself in the way. The leg impaled Tuma's back instead. A sickening crack echoed as his steel coating shattered, raining down in useless fragments. Was my steel this pathetic? Sota didn't even think. He bolted toward the monster to rescue his new comrades, but another of the spider's limbs snagged him mid-stride. It flung him like a rag doll against the catacomb wall. He slammed onto the stone floor, and in an instant, the spider had him cocooned in thick webbing. The beast crawled over, hoisting him into the air, its grotesque mouth drooling as it opened wide, ready to finish him off. But this was the exact moment Sota had been banking on. He feigned unconsciousness, grateful for the up-close and personal position. With a surge of heat, he incinerated the webs trapping him. Tuma stared in awe at the brilliant feint. Sota snatched a jagged shard of Tuma's broken steel and plunged it directly into the spider's massive eye. The second the blade pierced the socket, Sota unleashed a vicious electric jolt. He funneled pure lightning straight into its brain, while his other fist, now wreathed in fire, smashed directly into the creature's open mouth. The two-pronged assault barbecued the spider from the inside. After one last violent tremor, its enormous body crashed to the ground lifeless. It was all thanks to Tuma's shattered armor. Sota had actually pulled it off. He could finally save his mom, who was waiting on the other side. Tuma and Kotora gathered around Takuto's still form. Kotora completely broke down his body, racked with sobs of grief and disbelief. Tuma gently offered to carry Takuto's body so they could give him a proper farewell. Then he walked over to Sota. He started to congratulate him on slaying the queen, but Sota just shook his head, insisting he never could have managed it without Tuma's sacrifice. Tuma was floored. Sota wielded multiple skills, and that electric shock felt hauntingly familiar, like someone he despised. Sota admitted that the lightning ability had belonged to a man named Goku. Because of that, he felt he owed it to the guy to visit his grave. Tuma froze completely stunned. A grave? There was no grave to visit. He told Sota that Goku was very much alive. Our MC was totally lost. Tuma explained he'd literally just seen him yesterday. There was no way he was mistaken. Sota's mind went blank with shock. Suddenly, a blinding migraine slammed into Sota, forcing him to clutch his head in agony as the fireball spirit's voice echoed in his mind. You've touched the very root of this world. A bizarre memory flashed through his mind, him sitting in a classroom with some girl standing right next to him. But he had absolutely no clue who she was. His body gave out and he collapsed to the stone floor as darkness swallowed him whole. The fireball spirit's voice lingered cryptically, warning him that his mother wasn't the only one who needed saving. Back in a hospital room, Tuma pointed at a man and asked Sota if this was the face of the spirit he'd encountered in the catacombs. Our MC nodded. Even after that insane battle with the Spider Queen, it turned out the beef between Tuma and Goku was far from over. Tuma was already poking at Goku, asking if he was the real deal or some evil twin, calling his face vicious-looking. I'm an only child, Goku shot back. Tuma just shrugged, saying it tracked since Goku acted like a total spoiled brat anyway. The two of them bickered like toddlers, completely forgetting they were in the middle of a hospital until Sota had to jump in and shut them down. People were seriously starting to stare. They both finally went quiet, and Sota asked if it was safe to assume their mission was a success. He wanted to know if the gate they'd tackled was now closed for good. Tuma and Goku both confirmed it was totally stabilized. They explained they had triple-checked everything before they bounced. As soon as a gate's boss is taken out, the portal itself becomes inert. It can no longer spew out monsters or pose any kind of threat. Sota thanked them both for handling the cleanup and headed off to find Kotora. As Sota left, Goku turned to Tuma, asking if that kid was really the one who dropped the boss. Tuma confirmed it. Sota single-handedly wrecked a red gate boss. Goku was speechless. So the legends were true. You actually could inherit skills from the lingering souls of the dead. A ridiculously overpowered ability, paired with Sota's sharp instincts and pure nerve. That's when a brilliant idea sparked in Tuma's mind. He wanted to recruit Sota onto their squad. Tuma then mentioned he needed a favor from Goku, but Goku immediately shut him down. And just like that, they were screaming at each other again. Elsewhere, Kotora was meticulously working with parts scavenged from the dead spider. He was trying to extract its venom. That's where Sota found him just as the analysis was about to wrap up. The antidote would be ready any minute. Kotora asked Sota how he was feeling, especially since he'd passed out cold earlier. Sota just thanked Kotora for all his help back in the dungeon. Kotora admitted his own injuries were minor, then apologized, feeling like he'd just dragged the team down. Sota immediately waved it off. He knew that when someone you care about is on the line, your mind gets clouded. He understood that feeling better than anyone. It made him think of his own parents. Though he admitted Takuto was a different story, he still couldn't stand the guy. But he knew it was different for Kotora, and he respected that bond. "I can't compete with that," Kotora murmured. Our MC had no idea what he meant by that, but right as they were talking, the machine beeped. The antidote was finally synthesized. With the antidote from the legendary poison master Kotora in hand, Sota was urged to fly to get it to his mother immediately. Sota's heart swelled with gratitude. He tore through the halls, sprinting towards his mother's hospital room. This was the moment of truth. The cure that could save her was finally his. He looked at his mother's motionless body, his hand trembling as he gently brought the vial Kotora crafted to her lips. A single sip, and an ethereal glow suddenly consumed her entire body. Her eyelids fluttered, then opened. The poison had been completely purged. The second she awoke, Sota felt his breath catch in his throat. Just seeing her conscious again sent tears streaming down his face. Her eyes found his, instantly recognizing her son. She whispered about how much he had grown. The two were overwhelmed with emotion, a powerful reunion that felt like it was lifetimes in the making. The conversation turned to Sota's father. His mom's voice was soft as she asked what he had truly been feeling. Sota revealed that saving her had been his father's deepest, most desperate wish. He explained that his dad had passed on everything to him, his feelings, his power, his very will to fight, including the legendary Kichiro flames. A look of shock crossed his mom's face. This was not the news she had hoped for. She asked Sota what he intended to do now that he'd fulfilled his father's dream, and brought her back. Sota hesitated for a beat. She had a point. What came next? But deep down, he already knew. A fire ignited in his eyes. He was determined to become the undisputed strongest dungeon diver, ensuring no one would ever have to die again. That was the last thing his mother wanted to hear. Sota asked if she was against it. Without sugarcoating a thing, she replied with a firm, immediate yes. The thought of her son constantly throwing himself into mortal danger made her heart ache, but she understood. She knew she and his father were the very reason he felt this burning need. Still, she confessed it would be unfair of her to stop him from chasing his destiny. Her words made Sota blush. She made him swear to one thing and one thing only, that he would include himself in the list of people he was so desperate to protect. If he died, she wouldn't survive it. Sota vowed it would never happen. They embraced a desperate tight hug, clinging to the warmth of finally being whole again. It was the first time in forever they had truly been together. As Sota finally stepped out of the room, he noticed something. Tuma and Kotora were standing just down the hall, trying and failing to hide the fact that they were wiping away tears. They'd heard the entire thing. Tuma swore they didn't mean to listen in, but Sota just waved it off, saying it was all good. But a huge problem still loomed over them. Sota had broken the law, entering a catacomb without a license. How could they possibly explain this to the association? Tuma just smirked, oozing confidence. Their group was already taking care of it, he told them not to even trip. And then he dropped the real bomb, an invitation for Sota to join their crew. If Sota was serious about becoming the strongest dungeon diver out there, their squad was the fastest track to the top. In a different part of the world, deep inside a shimmering yellow gate, a man strode across a field of slaughtered catacomb monsters. He was apologizing to someone, explaining that Toma had gone rogue and acted on his own. He was speaking to a white-haired man who was lounging casually on a throne made from a mountain of monster corpses. The white-haired man seemed completely unbothered. After all, there was someone he wanted to meet too. A kid named Sota Sasaki. See, a team is basically a government-sanctioned guild that gets the green light from the Dungeon Diver Association. They get official approval to explore catacombs and take down bosses. In other words, these teams are legally obligated to conquer dungeons. As they walked on a peaceful sunny afternoon, Tuma proudly told Sota and Kotora that he was a card-carrying member of the world-famous team Tenru. Kotora's eyes went wide, jumping in to clarify that Tenru isn't just some top-tier crew in Japan. They're one of the most elite teams on the entire planet. The organization is divided into squads, numbered 1 through 10, and each one is led by a ridiculously overpowered captain. And watching over all of them was the commander-in-chief himself. Toma slapped Kotora on the back, impressed that he knew his stuff. Kotora's face fell slightly as he remembered how much Takuto had looked up to Tenru. He dreamed of joining them, grinding day and night, even without being on an official team. Tuma was at a loss for words. Soda then piped up saying he'd heard a few things too, like how the commander-in-chief's name is Yamato Sumeragi, a living legend who had resolved world-ending crises across the globe. The Japanese Dungeon Diver Association had officially declared him the strongest. Soda found himself wondering what it would even be like to meet someone on that level of power. Katora asked him if he was getting nervous, but Soda just shook his head. No, not nervous at all. To be honest, he was just incredibly grateful for the shot. Toma was floored. This kid had some serious guts. Right on cue, they arrived at the headquarters. From the street, it looked like a totally normal, kinda old house. But looks can be seriously deceiving. Tuma promised them it was way more than it appeared. The moment the door creaked open, a mind-blowing massive space unfolded before them. They were standing in a high-tech command center, the complete opposite of what they'd expected. But just as Tuma was about to launch into his grand tour and start bragging, a man materialized behind him and cracked him square on the head. The guy started chewing Toma out for going rogue and exploring a catacomb solo, then forcing the team to handle the fallout and explain the special exception. To the higher-ups, Toma instantly got defensive, shouting that he got permission from Yamato, but the dude just kept on punching. And this was Tuma's older brother. He was absolutely laying into Tuma, grilling him about dumping all his paperwork on Goku from the second squad. The name alone made him flash back to Goku's smug face mocking him earlier. Yeah, there's zero chance that guy kept his mouth shut. He 100% snitched. But still, the two brothers just kept trading blows and insults. Soda tried to step in and stop the madness, but the man just sliced through his words and calmly called out both Soda's and Kotora's names. He was Yusei Igarashi, he said, the deputy commander-in-chief of Tenru. Yusei then gave a deep bow, apologizing for his little brother's chaotic energy. He admitted that Toma has always been the type to leap before he looks. Our boy, getting all flustered, just insisted it was totally fine. After all, Toma had been a massive help. Right on cue, another man strolled in, commenting that Yusei was always way too hard on Toma. And it's him, the same guy we saw chilling in the catacombs on a throne of monster corpses, Yamato Sumeragi. He pointed out that Toma was just trying to do some good, so Yusei should probably chill out. Soda just froze on the spot. He never imagined the commander-in-chief would be this normal. Soda just watched them talk, and he couldn't help but notice Yamato was actually smaller than both Igarashi brothers. Firing up his ability, Soda peered into their souls. Yusei's soul was clearly on another level than Toma's, but Yamato's, his felt ordinary. No wait, it felt even weaker than that. Yamato's gaze suddenly locked onto Soda. He greeted him, saying he was pumped to finally meet the kid with the legendary anomaly ability. Our MC was just thinking that this Yamato guy was way more chill than his reputation suggested. Then Yamato dropped a simple question. Do you truly want to become the strongest? He offered to show Soda what real strength looked like, and our boy had to say yes. Before Yusei could even protest, Yamato waved it off, promising he'd take it easy. Besides, you could see it in Soda's eyes. The kid was absolutely buzzing for this showdown. Yusei had no choice but to let it happen, deciding to step in only if things got dangerous. Yamato led them to the training room, and in the blink of an eye, the world around them completely transformed. The shift was so instantaneous that Soda's brain didn't even have time to catch up. Yamato raised his left hand, giving a casual heads up that a punch was coming. Soda's burning eyes flared to life. He knew he couldn't drop his guard for a single microsecond. Yamato could unleash some insane skill at any moment. He tried to read Yamato's soul. Nothing. Still a complete blank. Then Yamato's entire aura warped, exploding into a brilliant orange glow. Too late. Yamato was already in his face. The punch connected, blasting Soda like a cannonball straight through the wall. Tuma, Yusei, and Kotora all screamed Soda's name in pure panic as the wall behind him splintered from the force. For a hot second, Soda thought a bomb had just gone off. But more importantly, what the hell was that? Yamato's soul was supposed to be human-shaped. As our MC clawed his way back to his feet, it hit him. That wasn't a skill. That was a raw, overwhelming concentration of pure, unfiltered energy. Yamato asked if he wanted to continue, and that question just flipped a switch inside Soda. Instead of feeling defeated, he felt more fired up than ever before. Flames erupted from his body as he forced himself to stand. Yamato lunged again, a relentless blur of motion, but this time, Soda managed to slip out of the way. The dodge surprised Yamato, but what did he expect? A storm of fists rained down on him, yet Soda weaved through every single one. He knew deep down that one more solid hit would put him down for the count. He couldn't afford to get touched, not even once. He realized he couldn't just trust his eyes anymore. He had to feel it, every twitch, every shift in weight, using every fiber of his being to react. This was it, a real fight against the strongest. An insane opportunity. Soda's blood was boiling with pure adrenaline as Yamato kept coming at him again and again. He didn't want it to end. He craved more. Harder hits, faster attacks, zero holding back. Yamato was grinning, unleashing a torrent of punches and kicks. But Soda was like a ghost, dodging every single strike. He was already bruised and battered, but he refused to quit the fight he started. Yusei was watching, completely floored. He couldn't help but respect Soda's insane courage for not backing down an inch. Toma asked his big brother for his thoughts, but Yusei just cracked a smile and said that this whole thing might have turned out for the best. A glow began to emanate from Soda's fist, tiny embers dancing around his knuckles as the heat started to build. He locked eyes with the commander-in-chief and asked, "Is it okay if I finally go all out?" Yamato's expression shifted ever so slightly. Then he told him that this was his serious mode, his top form, and that asking for permission just kind of kills the vibe. "It'd be better," Yamato said, "if you just came at me with everything you've got." Our MC planted his feet, ready to unleash absolute hell. Soda's flaming fist shot towards Yamato, detonating in a fireball on impact. Yamato's eyes went wide. He was in total disbelief. That skill, it belonged to the legendary Saitama Sasaki, the strongest fire mage in history. Seeing it again sent a jolt of excitement through Yamato, just like the old days. He looked at Soda genuinely impressed, declaring the kid had serious guts, and admitting with a grin that he was really starting to like him. Getting that kind of validation from the commander-in-chief was everything. Our MC was drenched in sweat, completely gassed, but the brutal training session wasn't over. Yamato slowly lifted his right hand as a blazing orange aura erupted around his form. The top dog was about to crank things up to a whole new level. But then, sirens suddenly screamed throughout the entire facility, and an emergency broadcast blared through the halls. Enemy invasion on the perimeter. The words hit them like a physical blow. A massive monster outbreak was tearing through Sakurazawa town. Soda was still completely wrecked from training, and now they were facing a full-on invasion. Yamato's battle-hungry grin vanished. Just when things were getting interesting, the sparring match was officially cancelled. When a Gates boss isn't taken down fast enough, monsters start spilling into the real world, and they go straight for the civilians. Yamato explained that gates this close to a city are never, ever ignored, which could only mean some other team of challengers must have failed their raid. The commander didn't hesitate for a second, immediately seizing control of the chaos. He snapped at Yusei, asking which teams were combat ready. Teams 1, 2, and 5. Yusei responded without missing a beat. Yamato immediately started barking orders. Team 5 was put on civilian evacuation, tasked with getting everyone to safety. Teams 1 and 2 were commanded to fan out and lock down a 5-kilometer perimeter around Sakurazawa town, containing the threat before it could spread. Yusei's and Tomo's squads got the job of handling the gate itself. Sota, unable to hold back his curiosity, asked Yamato for his assignment. The commander-in-chief simply smirked, saying he was going to punch a hole straight through the enemy lines and mop up the stragglers in the city. Personally, without a second thought, Sota blurted out, "Let me go with you." He had to witness a real battle. Yamato just leveled a dead serious gaze at him. "You fall behind, you get left behind." But our boy didn't even flinch. The fire in his eyes showed he was all in. "I can keep up," he declared. Yamato then motioned for Kotaro to join them, basically assigning him to babysit Sota in the hot zone. Then the commander-in-chief's voice boomed, giving one final order: "Move out, and every single one of you comes back alive." Out in the invasion zone, Yamato and Sota were a blur tearing through the streets at full tilt. Kotaro was already struggling to keep up. Their speed was just unreal. He was seriously worried for Sota. Throwing him into live combat right after that insane training was asking for trouble. Yamato was a one-man wrecking crew, smashing through monsters without pause. But a quick glance over his shoulder confirmed his fears. Sota was lagging, looking completely drained. Had he demanded too much from the kid? Just then, Sota's legs gave out and he collapsed. Kotaro scrambled to his side, asking if he was all right. Sota could only think, is this really where I hit my limit? The worry etched on Kotaro's face was obvious. He was thinking this was a suicide mission. Maybe it really was impossible for him. Maybe they should just fall back and let Yamato and the Elite Tenro team handle this. Sota had the fighting spirit, but his body was failing him. "Why are you pushing yourself to the breaking point?" Kotaro asked desperately. "You're already strong. We can let the commander handle this," but Sota refused, forcing himself to his feet. "I'm not running away. Not again. I'm done hating myself for being too weak. For the first time, this is my choice. I'm going to become the strongest. If I back down now, I'll lose a hell of a lot more than just this fight. I'll lose my entire reason for being here. No more lies." He knew exactly what he wanted to finally catch up to Yamato. Hearing that raw determination, Kotaro pulled out a small vial. His hands glowed as his poison alchemy instantly concocted a special potion. He shoved it into Sota's hand. "Here," he said. "This will unlock your latent power, give you a massive temporary boost. But be warned," Kotaro added grimly, "it comes with some serious side effects." Sota stared down at the swirling liquid in the bottle, his heart pounding. He took a sharp breath. Drink it or not. While Yamato continued to obliterate monsters, a report came in from Yusei. They'd swept the catacombs. There was no boss inside, meaning the main target had already escaped into the city. All they could do now was try to contain the flood of monsters pouring from the gate. Before the call could even end, a colossal ogre erupted onto the scene right in front of Yamato. Yamato sized it up. So that's the boss. This won't take long. But then a blur of motion shot past him. Yamato's eyes widened in disbelief. It was Sota. He smashed a blazing fist directly into the ogre's face. Kotaro's potion had kicked in big time. Sota's power level was off the charts. Kotaro couldn't believe what he was seeing. Thanks, man, Sota grinned, having chugged the elixir, without a single question about the consequences. The power surge was immediate, a tidal wave of pure strength flooding his entire being. In a flash, Sota was back in the fight. All Kotaro could do was scream encouragement after him. The ogre was launched into the air before crashing to the ground out cold. Yamato could only stare in pure amazement as another giant creature appeared before them. Flames erupted around Sota as he stepped up, his gaze locked on Yamato with pure, unshakable will. It didn't matter how far ahead Yamato was. He was never going to quit. He'd chase him to the ends of the earth. Just then, another colossal enemy simply blinked into existence right behind them, out of thin air. All Yamato could do was sigh. What a total drag. That's when he noticed it. Something about Sota was off. A torrent of raw power was pouring out of him completely unchecked. His eyes were shifting, deepening into a piercing molten gold. A raging inferno now enveloped his body, wild and impossible to ignore. Yamato casually explained that the gigantic ogre was the gate boss, the very creature that kicked off the entire invasion. Any monsters that already slipped through into the real world were here to stay. So taking down the big guy wouldn't just magically fix everything. Still seeing the deadly serious look on Sota's face, Yamato asked if he wanted to handle the boss solo. Sota didn't even hesitate, giving an immediate solid nod. Yamato figured he could pull it off, but he'd stay on standby, ready to intervene if things went sideways. Then, in less than a heartbeat, Yamato was gone. He was a blur across the city skyline, moving so fast that Sota lost him instantly. The stage was now his and his alone. He took a shaky breath, centering himself. This fight had been entrusted to him. The ogre hoisted its monstrous weapon and brought it crashing down with world-ending force. Sota dodged by a razor's edge, but something felt deeply wrong. This beast's defense was on a completely different plane of existence. The strategy had to be simple: get in close, break its posture, and then incinerate it with hellfire. Sota shot forward all instinct, unleashing a furious storm of punches, each one wreathed in roaring flames. But it was useless. If anything, it only enraged the monster further. The ogre bellowed and slammed a titanic fist into Sota, blasting him clean through a solid wall. The impact was so brutal he coughed up blood the moment he hit the rubble. Meanwhile, the ogre stood there without a single scratch. And then, the horrifying truth hit him. The monster was fire-resistant. It just took the hits like they were nothing. His flames, the very core of his power, were barely tickling it. That realization shook him far more than the punch ever could. Sure, lightning might stun it, but stunning it wouldn't kill it. His mind raced, desperate for a solution. Then a memory surfaced, the words of the fireball spirit from long ago. Don't rely solely on your father's power. Fire is strong, but not everything is meant to burn it, had warned. Sota remembered arguing, saying he already knew that, but the spirit had shot back. Are you absolutely sure? It had chewed him out, telling him that just because he was powerful didn't give him a free pass to charge in like an idiot. The spirit had taught him one final, desperate technique. At the time, the idea had thrilled him, but then he recalled the grim warning. This wasn't some guaranteed trump card. It was a long shot, a gamble that even the most legendary warriors on the planet couldn't consistently pull off. Only someone with a perfect understanding of their own soul could wield it correctly. So what is it? Sota had demanded impatiently. A kick, a punch, just spit it out. The spirit patiently explained that the form didn't matter. Whether it was a kick or a punch was irrelevant. The secret was to channel every single drop of his aura into one focused cataclysmic strike. He'd argued that he always went all out anyway, but the spirit had corrected him. True control sometimes involves holding back. Normally, aura flows from the soul and spreads throughout the body. To force all of that immense energy into a single point is an insane feat of concentration. Even seasoned fighters can only focus a small fraction of their power, but a true master of their own soul can command that flow perfectly, unleashing a devastating amount of power far beyond their normal limits. It sounded incredible, but it demanded absolute unbroken focus, and in a battle where one mistake meant instant death, achieving that kind of zen was damn near impossible. Sota was in the middle of that exact situation. How could he possibly find that calm center now? That's why the spirit called it an emergency-only move, leaving him with one last piece of pragmatic advice. If the enemy is just too strong, run. Back in the present, Sota faced the towering ogre once more. This time the fear was gone. He was dialed in. He reached deeper into himself than he ever had before. His flames swelled, burning hotter, and with a terrifying new level of control. The battlefield went silent. The pain in his body simply faded away. He now understood that his brutal spar with Yamato had prepared him for this exact moment. The ogre let out a world-shattering roar, trying to break his concentration. Soda didn't even blink. As the beast charged, something just clicked. He finally understood. Igniting in a blaze of glory, Soda shot forward to meet the charge. He rocketed high into the air, unleashing an even greater inferno, pushing his power beyond all known limits. This felt different. He zeroed in on the ogre's head. A bolt of green lightning cracked through the air. Stun. The monster froze for a nanosecond, its brain short-circuiting in confusion. That tiny window was everything. Soda looked it dead in the eye and then drove his fist, now a raging sun, directly into its face. With every fiber of his being. As the punch made contact, the name of the technique thundered through his mind, Soul Blast. A supernova of fire exploded from his fist, an inferno larger than anything he had ever imagined. The impact was apocalyptic. After launching the ogre clean across the battlefield, Soda's feet finally hit solid ground. The inferno sears deep and completely engulfs the giant. It collapses with a ground-shaking thud and stays down for good. Soda, gasping for air, slowly raises his hand, savoring the victory. He can feel it. He's closing the gap on Yamato's level. But then, from out of nowhere, a wave of vertigo slams into him. He crumples to the dirt, his strength vanishing in an instant. No, not like this. He remembers the potion Kotora gave him, and the grim warning about its kickback. So this was the consequence. More ogres start to materialize, forming a deadly ring around his vulnerable body. His legs feel like jelly as the world blurs at the edges. A single chilling thought cuts through the haze. Is this really my endgame? Elsewhere, Yamato gazes up at a towering skyscraper, deciding it's the perfect vantage point. He vaults into the air, soaking in the magnificent skyline. As his feet touch down on the rooftop, he radios Goto. Goto's voice crackles through reporting that Squad 2 has successfully contained the hostiles within a 5-kilometer radius of the tower. Squad 1 confirms the same. The chief commander thanks him. It was time to begin. With every piece now perfectly in place, Yamato unleashes a torrent of blue, flame-like energy that erupts from his body. It swallows the entire building, and then floods the whole district. Back with Soda, now trapped by a horde of slobbering ogres, there's no room for a strategy. He has to rely on pure instinct, not to win but just to make it out alive. Giving up is not an option in a place like this. He forces his trembling body to stand, bracing for the inevitable assault. All of a sudden, a brilliant blue flash erupts, instantly electrocuting every single ogre. What the hell was that power? Then it clicks. That had to be Yamato. Yamato stands atop the skyscraper, his fist raised high as a radiant blue aura pours from his being. The energy blankets the entire 5-kilometer zone. Yamato admits to himself it took a minute to set up. Then he speaks one word, seize. His skill, punishment, is activated, striking every single enemy inside the perimeter. One after another in dozens of different spots, the monsters simply drop to the ground, completely neutralized. Soda can only stare, his mind reeling. He was saved at the last possible second, and somehow he's completely unharmed. That's when the terrifying reality hits Soda. That aura wasn't just a massive power flex, and it wasn't just spread out for show. It had a singular, brutal purpose to annihilate every last ogre. Just then, a figure arrives. Our MC turns his head, overcome with the simple relief of being alive and rescued. The commander-in-chief himself strolls towards him, warmly congratulating Soda on a job well done. So this is the strongest, is the only thought our hero can form. He has to accept it. Yamato exists on a whole different level. Soda's vision begins to swim, the edges turning dark. Then everything goes black. Luckily, Yamato is there to catch him before he hits the ground. As he holds the unconscious boy, Yamato notices something odd. The boss ogre's energy signature had disappeared even before he launched punishment. Soda's only mission was to stall for time. And yet Yamato can't believe the kid actually managed to defeat the boss all on his own. This Soda Sasaki kid, he's definitely something else. Two newcomers walk up to Yamato, ribbing him for being as over-the-top as ever. They are Kakeru Amami Tenryu's first squad captain, and Karen Sawaragi, the first squad vice captain. Kakeru jokes that Yamato's about to get a noise complaint from the Association for his citywide light show. Yamato just shoots a verbal jab right back. Playing nice with the higher-ups was Kakeru's job as far as he was concerned. The chief was just ecstatic he got to put on a spectacular performance and scout a seriously gifted rookie. Kakeru asks for the new guy's name. It's Soda Sasaki. Yamato hands Soda over to the first squad, telling them to take care of him. What Yamato doesn't realize is that Kakeru was already dead set on recruiting Soda. He was reminded of Soda's mother. We see her now sitting on her bed holding a book, a soft smile on her face as she looks at an old photograph of Soda's family, standing together with a much younger Kakeru. As it turns out, watching over Soda was a duty he felt he was always destined to carry out. Back at the Heavenly Wolf headquarters training grounds, this is where players spar with their squads. Tuma and Soda were matched up. The jerk was 100% serious, transforming his entire body into what looked like living steel. He then taunts Soda, telling him to make the first move. Our MC gives a short nod. Without warning, Tuma rushes forward, yelling that enemies don't wait for you to be ready, so you have to be prepared for anything. Tuma throws a lightning-fast punch, and Soda doesn't even have time to blink. He eats the punch right to the face. Tuma immediately starts chewing him out. Soda's big finisher move is way too predictable. Our MC argues that it worked before. Sure, Tuma says haymakers hit hard, but they also leave you wide open for a counter. Tuma tells him he needs a proper opening if he ever wants to land those kinds of attacks. Besides, Soda was stuck in bed for days after using it. Everyone was worried sick about him. It was likely the backlash from his soul roar. He absolutely needs more training and experience. Just then, another person joins the conversation, telling them both to start taking their training more seriously. Our MC, completely clueless, just asks who she is. And just like that, Karen Soaragi, the vice captain of Squad 1, steps into the ring, and her face instantly sours. She immediately orders him to watch his mouth. I mean, for real, she's a vice captain and he's just some random squad member running his mouth. Without missing a beat, Tuma and Karen start throwing words like they're in a middle school cafeteria. A serious power trip is unfolding, and it catches Soda completely off guard. Damn, she's so young and already a vice captain, our MC thinks to himself as Tuma pulls his shirt back on. The girl was a total prodigy. Karen's intense gaze then snaps over to our MC. Soda offers a proper greeting and explains he's been assigned to Squad 1. Oh, Karen knows exactly who he is. The so-called lucky guy who fluked his way through a boss battle and somehow landed a spot on the team. She's also aware his parents were legendary conquerors. She flat out implies the only reason he's standing here is because the captain is doing his family a favor. Ouch. Other members nearby definitely heard that burn, sparking their own curiosity. Why would the captain pick a nobody like him? Tuma is about to fire back at her, but Soda actually stops him. She's not wrong. He straight up admits it. Still, Soda trusts that the captain must have seen some kind of potential in him. It might not be visible right now, but it's there. Cool as ever, he asks the vice captain to please guide him properly from this day forward. This completely blindsides Karen. She was braced for him to get angry not to be this damn respectful. His calm demeanor throws her for a loop, and because of it she agrees to train him herself. With no warning at all, Karen commands a change of scenery. In a flash, the dull room dissolves, reforming into a vast, sunlit meadow. It feels like they were just teleported outside. She warns Soda that her training uses full power skills. If he's gonna get scared, she can hold back for the moment. Our MC doesn't hesitate. Yeah, you should probably do that. That response just irritates her even more. Pathetic. She was trying not to actually mess him up, but here he was already getting on her last nerve. She was absolutely certain Soda was about to regret his entire life. Karen launches her attack. Rage of Gaia. The ground erupts violently. Chunks of earth fly up, slamming together to imprison Soda inside a solid dome. She mocks him from the outside, asking what he plans to do. Maybe cry and apologize, so I'll let you out. Suddenly, the dirt prison begins to glow red hot. Fiery cracks splinter across its surface before it explodes outward. Soda emerges from the blast. He fires back a taunt of his own, saying the vice captain is super kind for building him such a soft little wall. Karen is stunned by the counter, and now she is beyond angry. She attacks again. This time, the solid ground beneath his feet liquefies into quicksand. Soda's feet are sucked down the earth itself, trying to swallow him whole. Karen blitzes toward him, her fist primed to strike. But Soda, way more prepared this time, ignites his own hands in blistering flames and throws a punch to meet hers. Tuma starts to panic. They're both going for the kill now. Someone could get seriously injured. He screams for them to stop. He yells that they've taken things way too far. Their fists are about to collide with devastating impact. But just inches before they connect, both of their attacks are stopped dead. Someone is holding their fists caught between them. They are hurled into the air like ragdolls. The next thing they know, they're both eating dirt. What just happened? Soda groans. The Captain Conqueror had stepped in and shut them down. He knows they both need to cool off. Karen looks absolutely busted trying to come up with an excuse. And Soda is just confused, wondering who this guy even is. Conqueror introduces himself as the captain. What a hell of a first meeting. He says he's happy he finally got to meet Soda. Our MC, still shaken, mumbles that he feels the same way. This was not at all how he pictured their first introduction going. Then Kakeru teases them both, saying it looked like they still had plenty of energy to burn. They've been summoned. A red gate pulsing with a sinister glow just appeared in the middle of downtown. Soda, Kakeru, and Karen move like shadows through a quiet residential street. Their heads are on a swivel, scanning everything. Checking house numbers, peering around corners, glancing at rooftops, searching for any sign of danger. They had to be 100% sure this was the spot where the red gate was reported. The street looked perfectly normal. Too normal. Karen scratches her head, staring at the endless identical houses. She confesses that she is awful with residential areas. To her, every single house looked the same no matter how long she stared. Same roofs, same windows, same damn fences. She could get lost in 5 minutes if they left her alone. Kakeru just chuckles. He mentions that it's actually a huge relief they arrived early. If they had been late with monsters already swarming out of the gate, civilian casualties would have been off the charts, and no one wanted that weighing on their soul. Of course, Karen agrees, nervously. Our MC then asks if the captain was around during the last major invasion. The captain says yes, his eyes still sweeping their surroundings as they walk. Soda casually brings up the guy he was with earlier, Ichigo Kotora. He tells them Kotora got assigned to the Heavenly Wolf group. The mood immediately shifts. The captain's expression darkens, and he confirms that the Squad 7 leader had mentioned it. Karen lets out a low sigh and mutters under her breath that she feels bad for him being sent to that group. Getting assigned there was definitely not a win. Soda is completely confused. He looks between them and asks directly what's wrong with Squad 7. But before a word could escape, Keikuru's hand shot up. The very air in front of them started to warp and shimmer. It was like reality itself was being ripped apart at the seams, and then bam! A crimson gate materialized, looming silently between two suburban homes. The thing pulsed with a sinister red light. But that wasn't the only problem. They weren't alone. Another squad was already posted up in front of it. Soda just stared completely lost on why this was such a big deal. Keikuru calmly broke it down for him. He explained they were there on an official request from the association. The other crew, probably just mercs, called in by the terrified residents. It's what happens when civilians panic and dial the first number they can find. A wiry man's cigarette dangling from his lips swaggered forward. He took a long drag before identifying himself as Masatoshi Nishina, the captain of Team Ryan. Keikuru, ever the professional, gave his own introduction, captain of Heavenly Wolf Squad 1. The entire vibe on the other team shifted instantly. Jaws literally dropped. You could hear them whispering back and forth. Oh yeah, they recognized that legendary name. Well, everyone except Nishina, whose poker face didn't even twitch. Keikuru began to lay out the situation. He explained they were there to investigate the gate under the association's direct orders, but Nishina shut him down cold, telling them to get lost. Karen's eyes narrowed into slits. She fired back, reminding the guy that they were summoned directly by the top brass. So why the hell should they be the ones to back down? Nishina calmly confirmed Keikuru's suspicion. Team Ryan got the call from the locals first. And according to the association's own rulebook, when missions overlap, the squad that shows up first gets dibs. No exceptions. Keikuru simply nodded. He knew the rule, but he calmly added that having to turn tail after a direct order from the association would be a massive embarrassment. Even then, his tone was nothing but polite. He proposed a compromise. Couldn't they at least tag along and help clear the dungeon? Nishina just scoffed at that. He sneered that big-name teams are always desperate to kiss the association's butt. But shockingly, he agreed. But there was a catch. Inside the gate, Heavenly Wolf would be taking orders from Team Ryan. Their captain accepted the terms. Karen immediately shot Keikuru, a look that screamed, "Are you for real?" Why would he ever agree to that humiliation? But Keikuru looked completely unfazed. For him, if swallowing his pride meant keeping things running smoothly and dodging a pointless power struggle, it was a price worth paying. The captain had made his decision, and that shut Karen down completely. Watching this all unfold, something clicked for Soda. His captain was on a whole other level. His calm was infectious, spreading to everyone around him. With that, the two squads plunged into the Crimson Portal together. But for RMC, the red flags were already blaring. Some of Orion's crew were throwing some serious shade at Keikuru. To them, his whole humble act just screamed weakness. Nishina even cracked a joke about how a pretty boy like that managed to captain a top-tier team. Bagging this dungeon clear with Heavenly Wolf on their team would be a massive flex for their record. Nishina was already running the calculations. If they pulled this off with Heavenly Wolf as their backup singers, it would only boost their own clout. But the second they crossed the threshold, the entire vibe shifted. The air grew thick, oppressive, the space plunged into darkness, and then they were swarmed. Phantom knights materialized from the shadows, dozens of them encased in heavy plate armor and brandishing colossal weapons. Tim and Ryan were frozen solid. Even Nishina's smug expression vanished, his ego taking a massive blow. The sheer power gap was suffocating. His squad looked to him begging for orders, but his mind was blank. He was just as terrified as they were. Behind them, Soda's burning eyes flickered to life. A faint crimson glow danced in his pupils as he sized up the enemy formation. These weren't your basic low-level mobs. They were on another level entirely. Soda knew Team Orion was about to get steamrolled on their own. Kakeru murmured the same grim assessment. Humanity's intel on these catacombs was sketchy at best. Red gates were classified as the ultimate danger zone, but that ranking was based on outdated, limited data. To get ambushed by elites right at the entrance meant this gate was something else entirely, a completely unknown variable. Without warning, a knight lunged toward one of Team Orion's members. The guy just locked up pure terror, short-circuiting his brain as his legs refused to budge. Watching it happen, Karen found it almost pathetic. All that trash talk and flexing just moments ago, and now they were crumbling at the first real threat. Soda didn't even hesitate. He exploded forward, his fist wreathed in roaring fire. He slammed a flaming haymaker directly into the knight's path. The blow halted the deadly blade just inches from the petrified team member's face. That single explosive move instantly put him on every enemy's radar. Sota glanced over his shoulder, checking if the Orion guy was okay. Karen shot him an irritated look, annoyed by his reckless heroism. Kakeru noted that Sota moved on pure instinct. His ambition was to become the strongest conqueror in the world. And he added being the strongest meant you never let a single person die under your watch. Karen was speechless. It sounded like a naive fantasy, a dream far too idealistic for their brutal reality. But Sota was done talking. He launched himself at the wall of knights blocking his path. That declaration of his resonated with both Kakeru and Karen more than they expected. The captain then turned his gaze to Karen. "What's your purpose now?" he asked, while Sota became a blur of motion, weaving through attacks and landing fiery punches. The question sparked something deep inside Karen. Was her goal just to be stronger than her rivals? Her captain pushed, asking what she truly craved. Was it to outshine the other teams? Team Orion was now engaged in a desperate fight, struggling just to survive. Then a memory sliced through her, a cold, lifeless body on the ground. Someone she had failed to save when she was just a rookie. She remembered the feeling of standing there, completely and utterly powerless. That was the moment she swore to become a conqueror. It was never about the status or the praise. It was so she would never have to feel that kind of helplessness ever again. A surge of rage filled her fury at herself for ever forgetting. Just as an enemy ghosted up behind Sota, its blade raised for a killing blow, Karen acted. A jagged boulder erupted from the dungeon floor. Her attack descended with overwhelming force, crashing into the knight's side before the creature could even process the threat. Sota whipped his head around to look. She clenched her fists, her knuckles white. She refused to let anyone else die. Not again. She was furious with herself, forgetting so lost in the grind for power that she forgot who she was supposed to be. A quiet smile touched Kakeru's lips. Watching the two of them battle, their eyes blazing with renewed conviction, he saw it. His team was finally on fire. And now they were ready to confront whatever horrors this red gate held. They were completely boxed in, trapped in a tightening ring of hulking armored nightmares closing in from all sides. But even against these impossible odds, Sota and Karen didn't take a single step back. Karen made the first move. Wasting zero time, she slammed her power into the ground and unleashed Rage of Gaia. The very floor detonated upwards into a forest of razor-sharp stone pillars like giant spikes erupting from the depths. She immediately followed it with Piercing Strike. The stone lances smashed into the charging horde. For a split second, it looked like a game-changer. But then reality hit hard. The spikes didn't penetrate their armor. They barely even staggered the knights. The armored juggernauts just plowed through the shattered stone, like it was nothing more than a nuisance. Sota didn't let the shock settle in. He stepped up and blasted his mana forward, firing a stun to try and halt their advance. Instantly after he unleashed Blaze, a searing wave of fire roared across the battlefield, burning hot enough to melt steel. He even dumped a full-powered hellfire into the mix, completely swallowing several knights in a vortex of intense flame, but once the fire cleared, the knights were still standing. Their armor was scorched black and glowing red, but it wasn't broken. Their defensive power was off the charts. That's when the terrifying realization crashed down on them. Yeah, hellfire could probably kill one, but not like this. Not when facing an entire army of them. If Sota kept burning through mana with attacks that powerful, he'd be running on empty long before they even made a dent in their numbers. As the knights continued their relentless march, Sota narrowed his eyes, his gaze piercing through the chaotic front line. And that's when he saw it. Looming behind the horde of soldiers was a single, colossal knight. It towered over all the others. The giant barely moved, but its presence alone felt like a physical weight crushing the very air around it. One of these things is not like the others. Karen spots it instantly, and her blood runs cold. That's the boss. It radiates a menacing aura you can't possibly miss. Karen immediately barks an order at Sota to focus all their firepower on that single target, telling him not to hold anything back. Their strategy is simple. If they can decapitate the leader, the rest of the grunts might just collapse into chaos. They both begin channeling their energy for one ultimate all-in attack. End Stake Blaze. They gather every last drop of mana they can muster, compressing it into a single point, betting everything on this one decisive shot. But just milliseconds before they can fire, the towering boss knight deliberately raises its colossal sword. In that same instant, a phalanx of soldiers rushes to the front, their shields interlocking with perfect drilled precision to form an impenetrable wall. Sota and Karen's combined blast slams head-on into the line of shields. The resulting explosion is earth-shattering, but behind the wall of steel, the boss is completely unscathed. Then the boss lowers its sword, pointing it forward. The signal is unmistakable. In perfect unison, the legion of soldiers surges forward in a terrifying unified charge. That's when the horrifying reality clicks into place. These aren't just mindless monsters. They're a disciplined force. They follow commands. They act as a single entity. This isn't a random horde. It's a goddamn army. Hiding off to the side, Nishina is crouched down low. utterly paralyzed as he witnesses their entire plan fall to pieces. He whispers to himself, wondering why Kakeru's team is even bothering to fight back. They should be running for their lives, but he's so caught up in his fear that he fails to notice Kakeru standing right behind him. Kakeru's voice cuts through the chaos, steady and calm. "We're fighting because we know the consequences of running." At that moment, two of Nishina's own teammates scream his name, their faces etched with pure panic. They plead with him to retreat, to get back up, to leave this impossible fight to Heavenly Wolf. For a long moment, Nishina is silent. And then he shakes his head. "No. If we run now, what happens then? If this army pushes past us, it won't be strangers who pay the price. It'll be our town, our homes, our families." That single thought triggers something deep inside him. He shoots to his feet, his voice ringing with newfound resolve, shouting that winning isn't the point here. We just have to survive and protect what's ours. That's enough. In an instant, Team Orion moves. All hesitation has vanished. They charge forward, positioning themselves as a human shield between the advancing enemy and Heavenly Wolf. Now they fight shoulder to shoulder with Soda and Karen, clashing directly with the knights. The air fills with the shriek of swords crashing against armor, erupting in a shower of sparks with every blow. Waves of power detonate around them, shaking the foundations of the earth and filling the air with searing heat and concussive force. Kakeru watched it all unfold, but even with their combined forces, it wasn't making a dent. The knights were overwhelmingly strong. There were simply too many, and the boss remained in the back, untouched and observing. That's when Karen felt it. The very atmosphere began to shift. Kakeru was preparing something on a whole other level. A deep tremor ran through the ground beneath them as a crushing pressure descended upon the battlefield. As Kakeru unleashes his aura, the sheer intensity of it is suffocating, a presence so immense you can't ignore it, even if you tried. Karen feels her own power resonating with his, as if an invisible force is pulling them into perfect harmony. Their abilities begin to align instinctively. The ground beneath them lurches and rises as Kakeru masterfully harnesses their combined powers to elevate everyone simultaneously. Team Orion and Heavenly Wolf are lifted into the air, standing upon a massive floating platform forged by Karen's own ability. Soda frantically asked Karen what was going on. She explained that their captain had just used his skill to reposition their entire squad. In the sky, above a gigantic hand composed of pure aura, begins to materialize, slowly solidifying into a colossal fist. Giant killing. The knights below were completely blindsided. The massive hand then shot forward in a single, brutal punch. The resulting shockwave was a cataclysm, sending the entire knight army flying in every direction. Bodies were flung like rag dolls across the terrain, completely helpless against the overwhelming force. Karen knew this attack wasn't meant for a single target. It was designed to obliterate everything in its path, smashing through the ranks of soldiers and carving a direct open line straight to the boss. The titanic strike continued its relentless advance, carrying with it an impossible weight. That single blow was world-breaking, heavy enough to crush an entire legion. It was a display of power that could even challenge the Grand Captain himself. The two were left in stunned silence. This was the true power of their captain. The heavy punch landed squarely on the boss. The impact thundered through the entire catacomb, a deafening boom that left everyone's ears ringing, but the attack had clearly taken a massive toll on Kakeru. Sweat drenched his face, and his shoulders heaved as he struggled to catch his breath. For a brief second, his mind flashed back to his training days. He remembered unleashing the same skill against a solid rock wall. The crack he'd made then was tiny, jagged and uneven, a pale imitation of the devastation he just unleashed, and yet his mentor had stared at the paltry damage, then back at him, with a look of pure astonishment. He had congratulated him on finally awakening his unique skill. Kakeru had been completely exhausted that day too, but he hadn't felt a single shred of the pain. He was just overwhelmed with joy at seeing that look of pride on his mentor's face, overjoyed that someone finally believed in his potential. His mentor, who was also Soda's father, placed a firm hand on his shoulder and told him he'd done well. He said it with the kind of pride a father has for his own son. Back in the present, a wave of applause snapped him out of the memory. His teammates were cheering for him, their voices filled with awe. Soda was in disbelief. That skill was nuts. You nearly one-shot the entire army, but Kakeru just shrugged it off as if it were nothing. He said his so-called pride and joy was just a ridiculously destructive skill. It was pure, unadulterated power. No special tricks, no clever mechanics, just raw, overwhelming brute strength. He straight up admitted that compared to Karen's raw power, or Mr. Kiichiro's refined methods, his own abilities were rigid, and sometimes just plain inconvenient. That confession stopped Soda cold. Like, why was his captain just casually name-dropping his dad? He had to ask if the captain actually knew him. But before Kakeru could drop any more lore, Nishino and his entire crew suddenly snapped into a deep bow, apologizing profusely. They stammered about how they had no idea who they were really talking to, that Captain Amami Kakeru was none other than one of the legendary Knights of the Round, a monster known as the Fist of Destruction. Keikaru just waved it off like the title was no big deal, but that only cranked Soda's curiosity up to 11. He demanded to know what the Knights of the Round even were. Karen jumped in, explaining it was a story most people weren't clued in on. She revealed they were the very first official player team ever formed in Japan, the entire player association that came later. They basically just copied the blueprint the Knights created for the current team system. Tons of their members ended up becoming high-ranking suits, so they could pass their wisdom down to the new generation. Keikaru added that not everyone took that path. Some, like him, decided to join up with fresh teams. Others, like Soda's father, chose the lone wolf life of a mercenary. That bombshell absolutely floored Soda. His dad and his captain were on the same squad. Keikaru just smiled, saying it went way deeper than just being teammates. Soda's father had been his mentor, the very person who pulled him into the world of players, the one who gave him his big break. Meanwhile, across town at the Player Association building, the vibe inside Chairman Ryunosuke Bando's office was thick with tension. Bando was perched behind his desk, a cigarette smoldering between his fingers, a thin ribbon of smoke twisting into the air. Yusei and Yamato sat across from him, the topic of conversation being Soda. The chairman was already aware that Keiichiro's kid had signed on with Kakeru's crew. Then abruptly, Bando crushed his cigarette into the ashtray. The atmosphere shifted instantly. He announced they would turn a blind eye to the boy's illegal activities, including his unauthorized dive into the catacombs. Yusei offered his thanks, promising they would handle Soda, all while Yamato was obnoxiously slurping his juice box. The chairman finally snapped. "What's with the attitude?" he barked, glaring at the chief. Yamato left with no other option, offered a thank you dripping with sarcasm. Yusei immediately tried to smooth things over, apologizing to the chairman and vowing that he and Kakeru would get everything sorted out. Later, Yamato nonchalantly mentioned that since Soda's dad was an old comrade, helping his kid out was just what you do. He told the chairman to get off his high horse and stop acting like Soda owed him a life debt for it. That pushed Bando over the edge. He reminded Yamato that he was still the head of the whole association and couldn't just throw the rulebook out the window for old friends. But then his entire expression softened. He saw something new in Yamato in the way he stood, the way he spoke. Yamato was slowly turning into a carbon copy of him. The chairman explained that Heavenly Wolf's influence was skyrocketing because of its sheer strength, and with that kind of power, acting reckless was a one-way ticket to disaster. Yamato needed to get a grip on his position. People were already starting to resent him. Yamato owned it, admitting he could be arrogant and pushy, but he insisted he never once forgot the immense responsibility that came with his power. His voice dropped, getting dead serious. He said he grilled himself every single day, asking if what he was doing was truly right. As he spoke, his aura exploded, crackling blue electricity arcing around him, slowly flooding the entire office. He had no time, he growled, for idiots who refused to use their brains or put in the work. He couldn't care less about complaints from people who just sat on the sidelines with their arms crossed. His raw energy zapped the chairman's unlit cigarette. It flared to life instantly. "If anyone has a problem, they can say it to my face," Yamato challenged, taking a long, slow drag. The smoke seemed to trigger a memory. Yamato just shrugged and said, "We all grew up in the same dump. Of course we'd start to think alike." Bando's mind drifted back through the years. He saw himself smashing his fist into a young Kakeru's face, screaming that this wasn't some playground for childish fantasies. The punch sent Kakeru to his knees, but Bando just kept roaring like a ruthless father, trying to beat the dreams out of a stubborn kid. But Kakeru shot right back without a hint of fear. He was going to become a player no matter what, so Bando should quit whining and just bring him along for the ride. Before things could get any uglier, Keiichiro stepped right between them. He took Kakeru's side, telling Bando the kid was dead serious. He held out a hand to help Kakeru up, asking if he was all right. Then he introduced himself, Sasaki Keiichiro, and asked for the boy's name. Kakeru was stunned. This man's presence was a world away from Bando's. His aura was calm, light, and deeply reassuring. Kakeru took his hand. That single moment altered the course of his entire life. Back in the catacombs, Kakeru laid it all out. He, Yamato, Yusei, and Toma had all been raised in the same orphanage. The place was always struggling for cash, and as the oldest, he felt like he had to do something, anything to help. And the one who threw him a lifeline back then was none other than Soda's father. Hearing this, a huge smile spread across Soda's face. He felt an undeniable connection to his captain, a bridge built by his dad. He was just about to beg for more stories, when a blinding white light erupted out of nowhere, freezing everyone in their tracks. And just like that, a portal materialized right before their eyes, deep inside the catacomb. A gate spawning within another gate. Was that even a thing? This was completely off-script, a scenario none of them could immediately wrap their heads around. Karen and Soda were frozen on the spot. Staring completely dumbfounded, Soda's eyes shot to his captain, desperate for him to say something. Anything to make sense of this insanity. But Kakeru's gaze was already locked onto the portal, his expression hardening into a deadly serious mask. He seemed almost detached, and the way he stared at it screamed that this wasn't his first time seeing something like this. A brutal memory clawed its way to the surface. The last time he'd witnessed a gate erupt inside a dungeon, he'd been standing shoulder to shoulder with Keiichiro. Back then, neither of them had a clue what was lurking on the other side. They had no idea if they were about to face the queen, or something infinitely worse. But without a second of hesitation, they both agreed they had to dive in. That's when everything went to hell. The next image that burned in Kakeru's mind was Keiichiro crumpled on the ground, drenched in his own blood, his breathing ragged and faint. That scene was forever seared into his memory, the sight of his friend catastrophically wounded, still trying to force himself to his feet. Karen's worried voice yanked him back to reality, but Kakeru's resolve was already forged in steel. He announced he was going to scout the gate alone. His orders were chillingly clear. Karen and Soda were to retreat and call for immediate backup. They just stared, utterly shocked. Their captain was the one calling for reinforcements. That fact alone hammered home just how dire this was. Kakeru explained, his tone calm but unyielding, that this was an anomaly, and because it was an unknown, they couldn't risk treating it like a typical mission. They needed support, and they needed it now. But Karen stepped forward, planting herself directly in his path. Her voice trembled, but her eyes were unwavering. She gave him a reminder. She was the vice captain of the first squad. Her job wasn't to turn tail and run. The 6 of them were standing right at the threshold. "I'm not a kid anymore," Karen declared, her voice ringing with conviction. She wanted to be his comrade in battle, not a spectator he was shielding from danger. Kakeru's gaze then shifted to Soda. The younger player swallowed his terror and choked out that he wanted to go too. Kakeru's expression instantly turned to ice. The answer was a hard no. He wouldn't let Soda walk into the same nightmare that almost cost him everything. But Soda couldn't grasp the gravity of his words. That's when Nishina's group came forward. Nishina offered to have his team be the ones to fall back and request backup. He was brutally honest, admitting that compared to Kakeru's elite squad, they wouldn't be much help inside a freak gate like this one. They'd only slow the main trio down. These two, however, were absolute powerhouses. He added that shielding your subordinates is vital, but trusting them to rise to the occasion is just as crucial for them to truly grow stronger. Kakeru mulled it over for a heavy moment. Then he gave a curt nod. He ordered Nishina's team to get to the association and demand immediate reinforcement. Nishina's 2 squad mates were visibly relieved to be staying out of it. Before heading out, Nishina faced Soda. He gave our MC a sincere thank you for saving his teammate's life earlier. Our boy just blushed, completely unused to that kind of gratitude. They shared a quick, firm handshake, a silent gesture of mutual respect. The remaining 3 watched as Nishina's team made their exit from the catacomb. Our MC waved them off. Then a voice whispered right beside him. The fireball had rematerialized, floating at Soda's side like a loyal cryptic pet. The sudden appearance still made him jump, even though he should have been used to it. The orb began to speak of the coming moment. It would be a catalyst for immense change, a critical turning point that could radically alter their destinies. But its voice was glitching badly. Like a terrible signal, most of the words were garbled and unintelligible. Yet one piece of the message sliced through the static, loud and clear. He had to go in by himself. Soda snapped out of it as Karen and Kakeru called his name. He shook his head, trying to clear the fog and get his game face on. Whatever monster was waiting inside that gate, they were about to meet it head on. Our MC quickly yelled an apology and said he was on his way. He glanced at the fireball, telling it not to sweat it. He wasn't by himself. He had strong, trustworthy allies watching his back. Soda finally sprinted toward the shimmering portal. The last thing he heard was a chilling final warning. No matter what truth he uncovers inside, he cannot afford to make a single mistake. Meanwhile, Nishina's team successfully breached the outer gate and made it outside. They immediately began strategizing how to contact the association and get reinforcements sent out. They never finished the thought. In a flash of pure horror, invisible blades sliced through their bodies. There was no warning, no sound of an attack. Just deep, bloody gashes appearing out of thin air all over their skin. Blood sprayed across the dirt as both of them collapsed in an instant. Nishina froze solid, his mind utterly failing to process what just happened. It was over, in a heartbeat. A man was standing behind their fallen bodies, telling them to get away from the gate. The energy radiating from him felt fundamentally wrong, suffocating. It was a twisted, vile darkness that felt anything but human. A white-hot rage flared to life inside Nishina. He roared, demanding to know who the hell this guy thought he was. The monster simply sneered at him. He said it wouldn't matter to someone who was about to become fertilizer for the soil. This taunt pushed Nishina over the edge. Without a shred of hesitation, he activated his alter ego power, surging around him as he prepared for battle. But a cold dread was already setting in his gut. This thing wasn't just strong, it was on a completely different tier. An attack that launched invisible strikes across such a massive area should have a serious wind-up time. Nishina wasn't about to give him that. Fists blazing with green energy, he rocketed forward, weaving left and right to bridge the gap in a heartbeat, but the enemy remained perfectly still. Nishino never even got close. Unseen blades ripped through him from every angle before he could so much as chamber a punch. A universe of pain detonated inside him. Crimson mist sprayed from his wounds, a horrifying repeat of what happened to his teammates. The man hadn't moved a muscle, and that was the most chilling part. Nishino crashed to his knees, his gaze fixed on the figure looming over him. Monster. It was the only word that computed. With a terrifying nonchalance, the man began nudging the mangled bodies back towards the mouth of the catacombs, like he was returning misplaced items, arranging them as some kind of sick offering. Nishino could only stare, drowning in helplessness and regret. He had failed his crew. The enemy's voice cut through the silence, musing that they would make excellent fertilizer. Their blood-soaked bodies lay broken on the stone as the monster turned and walked deeper into the darkness without a single glance back. The moment they crossed the threshold, an unnatural hush fell over them. It wasn't just quiet, the silence itself felt heavy, oppressive. Not a single enemy in sight, no motion, nothing but the sound of their own feet on the ground. Karen was the first to call it out. This place was way too silent. The captain couldn't argue, but they had to press on. He declared he'd scout ahead, sweeping every corner and corridor. Before he took off, he warned them to stay frosty and keep their heads on a swivel. But Karen couldn't shake the pit forming in her stomach. The whole place was giving her majorly bad vibes, like 1,000 unseen eyes were locked on them. She snapped Soda's name, catching him totally zoned out again. He didn't even try to deny it, admitting his head wasn't fully in the game. Karen shot him a look. There was literally nothing here. What could possibly be sidetracking him? Soda paused for a beat. Well, actually, there was something. He'd been discreetly using his flaming eyes this whole time, and he wasn't looking at empty space. He was looking at souls, legions of them aimlessly drifting through the catacombs all around them. The second he voiced it, Karen went rigid. This entire dungeon had been packed with ghosts. From the moment they walked in, Soda wasn't 100% sure if souls and ghosts were the same thing. But close enough. Karen asked if he'd ever run into a scene like this before. Soda confirmed he had, near the school and other spots, even just the other day, but never ever on this scale. The numbers were just insane. He clarified that the spirits he usually spotted were distinctly human, like regular people, just transparent the way he once saw his own dad. This, however, was a suffocating sea of them. Soda started to wonder what it all meant when he noticed a single soul staring right at them. Acting on instinct, Soda gave it a little wave. Karen jumped, completely weirded out, thinking he was talking to her. Soda corrected her, explaining he was greeting one of the spirits. The soul looked absolutely floored. A living person could see him. It immediately sputtered an apology for startling them, and shakily introduced himself as Utsugi. As he got a grip on himself, his hazy outline started to sharpen, coalescing into the clear form of a young man. Utsugi revealed that he'd been tailing them ever since he heard Soda clashing with his captain, a little while ago. Soda racked his brain. Oh, right when the captain was trying to bench them for their own safety. The memory surfaced of Captain Kakeru, insisting they call for backup, while he went in alone. Utsugi said that's almost exactly what went down with his crew. While exploring these same catacombs, they walked straight into a death trap. His team yelled at him to fall back and get reinforcements, forcing them to split up. He fled alone while they stayed to fight, but the backup never made it in time. His teammates were wiped out. He knew he would have just slowed them down, but he wishes he had stayed with them. The memory alone was enough to make his form waver as he choked up. Leaving them was his life's biggest regret. If only he'd been courageous like Soda, maybe his friends would still be alive. All the while, Soda was quietly relaying the whole tragic story to Karen. Her expression softened with pity, and she asked in a gentle voice if there was anything they could do for him. Soda's eyes widened. Karen clarified that maybe they could help him find peace, help him pass on properly. A small smile touched Soda's lips. Even though Utsugi was just a ghost, Karen couldn't stand the thought of leaving him trapped in this miserable place. Soda turned back to Utsugi and asked him what haunted him the most. Utsugi admitted he had a mountain of regrets, but if he had to pick just one, it was that no one ever got to see his unique skill in action. He just wanted to use it in a real battle just once, for it to actually make a difference. Soda asked him what the skill was called. Island Utsugi replied. Soda translated for Karen, explaining that the skill let the user share their direct line of sight with other people. Karen's first thought was that it sounded more like a recon ability, meant for teamwork, not for throwing hands directly. Her gaze then snaps to Soda, who's muttering to himself again, and she tells him to cut it out because he's confusing everybody. Soda apologizes, explaining he was just geeking out over how awesome the skill really was. This gets a double take from both Karen and Utsugi. Awesome. For real. Soda flashes a grin, about to drop some knowledge, but the camera whips away, plunging deeper into the dungeon. Captain Kakeru stands before a colossal gate, his fists clenched white. It's a dead ringer for the one they just passed. And that could only mean one thing. A hulking knight-like monstrosity materializes behind him, but Kakeru doesn't even flinch. He was expecting a gatekeeper. The creature's sword arcs down with bone-shattering force. Kakeru's blade meets it, but the real shock is that the enemy doesn't budge a single inch. He boots it square in the chest to make some space and instantly ignites his skill. Giant killing. A fierce blue aura explodes from his body as he unleashes Ren's strike. A massive spectral hand of energy smashes into the monster, but the knight barely even wobbles. The attack might as well have been nothing. Kakeru's brow furrows. This thing was built different, way tougher than the armored grunts they just wiped the floor with. He unleashes a volley of attacks, testing every angle, but nothing lands. In his gut, he knows only Conquering Fist has the juice to end this. But a skill that powerful needs a serious charge-up time, and time is a luxury he doesn't have. Just then, a voice calls his name. Karen and Soda slide in beside him, their expressions grim and battle-ready. Soda takes a step forward. He tells the captain they're tapping in. Kakeru immediately shoots that down. This enemy is on another level. He orders them to fall back and buy him time. But Soda stands his ground, assuring Kakeru that it's going to be okay. He says to leave this monster to him and Karen. The two of them turn to face the gargantuan knight. Its presence is suffocating, far more intense than the others. But they show no fear. They're about to prove what they're made of, and they plan to put this thing in the ground in under a minute. But Captain Kakeru is not convinced in the slightest. He declares it's impossible. This knight is obviously more powerful than the last boss they struggled against. They even needed Kakeru to step in just to clean up the leftovers. So what chance did they have against this upgraded version? The monster hefts its blade, settling into a new combat stance, coiled to strike. Soda's voice cuts through the tension, dead serious. He says he knows Kakeru is always the one leading the charge, always putting his neck on the line for them. But if they keep cowering in his shadow, letting him take all the hits, they'll be stuck as rookies forever. His voice is steady, but it hits with the force of a physical blow. Even his energy feels transformed, more grounded, more mature, as if he's finally stepping up to carry his own weight in a real high-stakes battle. Becoming stronger has been his one and only goal from the very start. Kakeru freezes for a heartbeat. That fire, it's painfully familiar. A memory flickers to life, him screaming at his own master, fueled by the same desperate need to be stronger, that he was sick of always being shielded. Karen then grudgingly admits that she's with Soda on this one. There's a damn good reason they want to take on this fight themselves. They have to prove something, not just to their captain, but to themselves. So together, they plead with Kakeru to let them handle this. That display of unity stuns him even more. After a long, tense moment, he finally cracks. Fine, he says, but if things start looking dangerous. He doesn't even get to finish his warning before they both cut him off with a heartfelt thanks. Kakeru is just left standing there, looking bewildered by the whirlwind of emotions hitting him. Karen shouts at Soda to get moving, and Soda instantly explodes into action, a vortex of flames erupting around him. Watching them charge, and Kakeru cracks a smile like a proud big brother. But then that smile falters. He's thrilled to see Soda's growth, but a part of him feels like he has no right to be. The pure joy of watching a student come into their own. That was a feeling he robbed from his own mentor, Kichiro. Back on the battlefield, the air grows thick with anticipation. Karen drops into a low stance, placing her palm flat against the ground. A soft pink luminescence spreads from her fingertips, etching glowing patterns across the entire battlefield, like spiderwebs of light. The ground trembles violently, and then colossal boulders begin to punch their way out of the earth, as if the very terrain is answering her command. Soda doesn't miss a beat. The instant the first rock is airborne, he launches himself off the ground and onto it. He moves with incredible agility, using each floating chunk of stone as a launch pad, vaulting higher and faster with every powerful leap. Behind the armored behemoth, the ground violently reshapes itself. A gigantic hand made of solid stone materializes. Its massive fingers curl into a world-breaking fist before swinging forward, with devastating force slamming right into the enemy's back. The impact booms across the chamber. The knight is sent hurtling through the air, its immense body thrown completely off kilter, and on a direct collision course with Soda. A vortex of fire engulfs Soda's entire arm as he pulls his fist back. The flames roar, burning more intensely than ever before. The moment the knight flies into his range, Soda hammers his blazing punch straight down. With every ounce of his strength, he cratered the enemy into the solid stone, the force of the impact spiderwebbing through the floor. Kakeru watched it all unfold from a distance. Their synergy was flawless, their timing impeccable. No hesitation, no wasted motion. But even with all that, he knew something was missing. Their attacks were brutal, but they weren't delivering the final blow. The armored knight groaned slowly, pushing itself out of the rubble, its plating scorched and dented, but far from broken. Karen reacted in a flash. She slammed her palm to the ground, and massive stone shackles erupted, coiling around the enemy's legs like to tangent-sized chains. The rock constricted, cementing its feet to the floor, and halting its advance. Soda, she commanded, her voice sharp and clear. The monster glanced up. In that same instant, Soda blinked back into existence before it, a blazing inferno of flames raging around him. Simultaneously, Karen conjured colossal stone fists behind the enemy's back. They were caught in a pincer attack with no escape from the coming impact. Soda unleashed a barrage from the front, his flame-wreathed punches searing black scorch marks across the knight's armor. But just as Karen's stone fists smashed into its back, the knight roared, flexing with sheer power and shattering the rock trap encasing its feet. Rock fragments exploded in every direction as it instantly regained its balance, not wasting a single millisecond. It raised its blade, unleashing a wide, deadly slash aimed directly at Soda. Before the steel could find its mark, a solid wall of rock shot up between them, an absolute clutch save from Karen, throwing up a shield at the last possible second. Soda leaped back, breathing hard but his eyes still locked on the target. Keikaru observed intently. Their timing wasn't just good, it was damn near perfect. They were thinking and moving as one. And that's when Soda noticed it. This thing was using the exact same basic attack patterns as the weaker ones they'd already fought. Even while launching his own assault, Soda's focus sharpened, his eyes burning like embers through the fire as he analyzed his foe. He was picking apart its rhythm, the subtle shift of its weight before a swing, the precise way its armor absorbed each blow. And then, he saw it. Tucked away deep beneath the layers of enchanted metal, a tiny vulnerability pulsed within its soul. It was a faint glimmer near its chest, right where a heart would be. But as he zeroed in on it, the glowing weak point slid a few inches to the left. This thing wasn't stationary. It was a moving target. We need to be precise, Soda muttered to himself. Without warning, a razor-sharp stone spike erupted from the ground behind the enemy, impaling it straight through the shoulder. The force of the blow ripped its entire arm clean off, sending it crashing to the floor with a deafening clang of metal. Soda's the one who found the weak spot, Karen's voice cut in. She stood several feet away, one hand still pressed against the stone surface. She looked totally calm, almost relaxed, like she wasn't even breaking a sweat, all thanks to Utsugi's Island. She was seeing exactly what Soda was seeing. For her, that weak point was now lit up like a beacon. Soda stood perfectly still for a moment, his flames roaring to life. Waiting for the perfect opening, Karen made the first move. With a single touch, the dust and rubble from the shattered battlefield began to swirl into the air. She might claim to be just some humble maiden, but she was setting the stage for the hero's grand finale. The sand swirled into a violent storm around the enemy. It completely blinded the knight, throwing its senses into chaos. The creature began slashing wildly, unable to see a thing through the thick cloud of dust. And through that swirling chaos, Soda charged. His flames intensified, wrapping around him like a suit of living armor. As he closed the distance, he let out a thunderous shout, spirit roar, and drove his fist forward with every bit of his power. His blazing punch tore straight through the armor, hitting the shifting weak spot dead center. For one silent moment, everything stopped. Then fire burst from within the knight's armor. Fiery cracks spread across its body, as it was consumed from the inside out. The knight staggered its very form, disintegrating, unable to hold itself together for another second. As the sand slowly settled, the enemy finally collapsed into a heap of smoldering, destroyed metal. The entire battle took less than a minute, but it felt like an eternity. From the sidelines, Utsugi just stared, his mind blown by how fast and efficient that takedown was. Soda turned to face him. He was breathing hard but had a triumphant grin on his face. "You did it," he said, holding out a fist for a fist bump. Without his skill, none of them could have pulled that off. Utsugi felt his eyes well up as he stepped forward and bumped his fist against Soda's. For the very first time, his power had made a real, tangible difference. A glowing blue screen suddenly materialized in the air before them. It displayed a single message: Utsugi Nozomi's regret has been resolved. Clear condition skill must be used in combat. Then a new line appeared: skill inherited Island effect. Allows vision to be shared with others. Utsugi let out a small, relieved laugh, looking like a massive weight had just been lifted from him. He immediately thanked Soda, admitting he never could have cleared his regret alone. Then he turned to Captain Kakeru and Karen to offer his gratitude. The moment the skill fully activated, the world shifted. Now they could actually see him. Not just sense his presence, they could see him standing right there, solid as anyone else. Kakeru blinked, completely stunned. Karen just stared for a beat before letting out a quiet, "Oh." Karen straight up confessed that when she first heard about Isen, she figured it would be totally useless in an actual throwdown. I mean, it sounded incredible on paper, but actually pulling it off in the chaos of a real fight felt like a long shot. But Utsugi had been her guide through the entire process. He broke everything down with perfect clarity and never lost his cool, which is the only reason she was able to fight effectively. She told him she was massively grateful. A gentle smile touched Utsugi's lips. He confessed he was just happy he could see them all one final time. Our MC felt the same, but then his entire demeanor shifted, his face hardening into a grim mask. He warned them that from the second he passed through that gate, a chilling premonition had taken root in his gut. They were completely lost. A bad feeling. What gate was he even on about? Utsugi elaborated, explaining it felt like he was on the verge of losing himself. as if lingering in this place for too long would twist him into one of the other aimless souls drifting through the ether. Those spirits were nothing like him. They felt hollowed out, utterly devoid of life, like something vital inside them had been snuffed out. Just before he vanished, he urged them to be careful. Then with no dramatic flourish, his soul simply dissolved into nothing. The three of them were left standing in stunned silence. Losing yourself. What the hell does that even mean? Soda wondered aloud. Was that the reason the fireball spirit bailed on them earlier? Could it all be connected? Karen let out a heavy sigh, muttering that Utsugi really didn't need to leave them with such a cryptic doom and gloom parting shot. She shot a sharp look at Soda, asking if he was about to get cold feet and run for the hills now. Soda shot back instantly that there wasn't a chance in hell. They both shared a brief, tense laugh. They were trying to break the tension mostly. Then Karen's voice rang out, calling to Captain Kakeru and saying they needed to get a move on. Standing around wasn't getting them anywhere. These catacombs weren't about to explore themselves. Looming right before them was a colossal golden gate. Kakeru strode forward without a flicker of hesitation, planting both his hands firmly on its surface. The massive doors groaned in protest as he forced them open. The chamber that lay beyond was absolutely immense. Nearly every surface was coated in a blindingly brilliant gold, the walls, the floor, and the towering pillars that flanked the room. Torches blazed along the walls, their flames dancing off the reflective gold and illuminating the space like some kind of surreal underground palace. Before Soda or Karen could even process the scene, Kakeru muttered that this place felt strangely familiar, as if he'd laid eyes on it before. Suddenly, Karen screamed for them to look, her finger trembling as she pointed toward the center of the room. A bead of cold sweat rolled down the captain's temple. In the dead center of the chamber sat something monolithic. An egg. It was gargantuan. Its surface was a deep, polished obsidian shot through with crackling veins of gold and a violent purple. It didn't gleam, but instead radiated a heavy, suffocating aura that made the very air feel thick and oppressive. Karen immediately whipped her head toward Soda. "Do you know what that is?" she demanded. But when her eyes landed on him, she froze solid. Soda was paralyzed, his face a mask of pure terror, like he'd just witnessed something impossible. He was holding his breath because standing guard right next to that colossal egg was a soul. And that soul was the spitting image of Captain Kakeru. No, it wasn't similar. It was Captain Kakeru's soul. A raw scream of disbelief ripped from Soda's throat. Cut to a flashback. We see Yamato casually chatting with Chairman Ryunosuke Bando. The chairman was asking him dead serious if it was truly possible to witness the soul of a person who was still very much alive. Yamato just nodded nonchalantly, unwrapping a chocolate bar. He confirmed it was entirely possible. He'd personally encountered Goten, the vice captain of the second squad, he was certain. There was even that one time when Soda stumbled upon Goten's soul in the catacombs. He actually thought Goten had died. They later confirmed the soul was a perfect match. The chairman, taking a sip of coffee, calmly suggested it was probably just a doppelganger. Yamato threw his hands up in a big X gesture and shot that idea down. No way. The soul was even using the exact same set of skills. This only deepened the chairman's confusion. Yamato playfully ribbed him, saying the old man had no imagination. The chairman's temper flared. Yusei landed a light punch on Yamato's arm to get him to stop screwing around. From the way Yamato was talking, it was obvious he already had a working theory. As he cracked open another chocolate bar, he admitted that he did. He explained that for a brief period, Su, his nickname for Soda, had actually spoken with Goku's soul. The life stories were a perfect match with the still-living Goku. The same memories, the same life events. Yamato held up a half-eaten chocolate bar in one hand and a brand new one in the other. He used them to paint a picture. What if a single existence could somehow fracture into two distinct versions, both sharing the exact same history? Then he dropped an even more mind-bending idea. What if before this world even came to be, there was another identical world that existed first? Back in the Golden Chamber, Soda's brain was short-circuiting. His captain was standing right here beside him, and yet at the exact same moment his captain's soul was standing vigil over that monstrous egg. Soda Karen's shout echoed across the vast golden hall. But before Soda could even begin to turn his head, a blinding, white-hot pain exploded in his chest. It was so fast he never even saw a blade. There was a sickening tearing sound, like metal ripping through heavy canvas. Then a spray of hot blood erupted from the wound. For one horrifying suspended second, he couldn't comprehend what had just happened. He hadn't sensed a single soul anywhere near him. There was no sound, no warning, no hint of a presence creeping up behind him. So how did this happen? Soda's body began to buckle. A figure emerged from the deep shadows cast by one of the gilded pillars. It was him, the very same enemy Nishida's team had faced down before. That's one, he announced with a chilling pride. The gash across Soda's back was a long, deep, and perfectly straight line. Too perfect. A dark crimson stain started to spread across the gleaming gold beneath Soda, growing wider by the second. Far off, the sole doppelganger of Captain Kakeru remained motionless beside the colossal egg. It made no move to attack, no gesture at all. It simply stared its expression, a bizarre mix of confusion and alarm, as if the entity itself couldn't comprehend what was unfolding. Yamato's theory shot through someone's mind. Could their world be caught in a loop? Soda's bleeding form lay sprawled on the golden floor. Captain Kakeru's soul stood just a few paces away, gazing down at him. His expression was a complete blank, not shock, not anger, just an empty void. Karen scrambled to Soda's side, dropping to her knees so hard the impact must have stung. Her hands were already trembling. She ripped off one of her own sleeves and without a moment's hesitation, slammed the makeshift bandage against the deep cut on Soda's chest. The fabric was instantly saturated with blood. Behind her, Kakeru's soul was a silent observer, just watching Soda's unconscious face, as his life drained onto the floor. But then abruptly, Soda's eyes flew open, and the golden hall was gone. The searing pain in his back vanished. There was no blood. He found himself in a strange, featureless space. He looked down at his body. No injuries, not a single scratch. Pure confusion began to cloud his features as he scanned the empty void trying to get his bearings. That's when he spotted a figure standing before him. It was Captain Kakeru, or at least a perfect copy of him. Same face, same powerful build, same aura, with one glaring difference. This man wore an eye patch. Soda's defenses immediately shot up. The whole situation felt wrong, totally off. He couldn't trust what he was seeing. For a split second, he assumed it had to be a fake, some kind of elaborate illusion, but the man calmly shot down that idea before Soda could even voice it. He claimed he was the genuine Amami Kakeru, just not the version Soda knew. He was, he said, from the previous world. This statement only deepened the confusion. Previous world, Soda ignited his flaming eyes, scrutinizing the man's soul for any hint of deception. What he saw sent a chill down his spine. It was authentic. There was no trickery. This was really Captain Kakeru. The man went on to explain that their world had somehow looped, that time had been reset, and that he had lived through the timeline that existed before this reset occurred. Soda's mind reeled, struggling to make sense of the impossible. A time loop. When did that happen, and why? Nothing was adding up. But then Kakeru dropped a bombshell. He said that in the last world, Soda had become much stronger. Soda remembered just trailing after them, hauling their heavy gear, and desperately trying not to fall behind. He had promised, maybe, but he wasn't anything like this. Now Kakeru could see it at a glance. Soda had powered up significantly. Hearing that just made Soda feel awkward. He'd just been taken down like a chump. He felt anything but strong. He shoved the thought aside and asked the one question that truly mattered. In that previous world, had he died? Kakeru shook his head. Soda didn't die. The one who fell was Kakeru himself. A vivid image flooded Kakeru's memory. Soda's body bleeding out Karen in a frantic panic beside him, and his own soul standing uselessly behind them doing nothing. In that moment, a crushing realization hit Kakeru. This loop had granted him a second chance, but unlike Soda, he hadn't changed at all. Back in the golden chamber, the enemy stood before the giant egg, gazing at it with a look of absolute worship. He whispered its name, Divine Majesty. This was without a doubt the single greatest moment of his existence. He even offered thanks to his past self for leading him to this point, tears of joy streaming down his face. He was certain his memories were a great gift, to what they called the Void. A memory flashed Kakeru on his knees next to a critically wounded Kaichiro, in this very same hall, with the same villain standing triumphantly over them. Back in the present, while the enemy was completely lost in his moment of ecstasy, a massive fist connected with his back. The punch was unbelievably powerful, sending the enemy hurtling across the chamber to slam into the far wall, leaving a spiderweb of cracks in the solid gold. It was Kakeru. He stood there, trembling with an uncontrollable fury. It was obvious to everyone that this psycho had just cut down his subordinate, without a second thought. Karen was paralyzed with indecision. Her captain was on a rampage while Soda was bleeding out. Her mind was in total chaos. Even Soda, drifting in and out of consciousness, grasped the reality of the situation. That punch was absolutely insane. If a normal human had been on the receiving end of that blow, they would have been vaporized. Kakeru's voice cut through Soda's hazy thoughts. It's still not enough. Back in reality, the tables turned in a fraction of a second. Kakeru suddenly staggered, a brutal noose slash carved right across his eye, and a geyser of blood just erupts. The searing pain forces him to recoil, his hand flying to his face. At that moment, Kakeru's stomach drops to the floor. Unbelievable. Now they were both critically wounded. The enemy materializes behind Kakeru, appearing from thin air, as if he'd been there the entire time. He scoffs at his own attack, calling it pathetic, admitting he was actually trying to split Kakeru's skull in two. The only reason he failed was because his right hand had been mangled earlier. Kakeru clenches his jaw, choking back a scream as pure fire lances through his eye. He refuses to go down. The enemy just tells him to shut his trap, snarling that if anyone gets to scream, it's him. He claims they completely trashed the single greatest moment of his life. Then he whips out a small vial. Even now, he dismisses them as nothing more than worthless filth. He sneers that they should be thanking him for staying even remotely rational in a situation this unforgivable. He then sticks out his tongue and chugs the entire vial in one go. The instant he swallows that final drop, his eyes blaze a terrifying crimson. Raw power crackles around him. His patience, he declares, has officially run out. With a sickening crunch, his twisted hand snaps right back into its socket as if it was never broken. He vows to carve them up, scatter their remains, and grind them into the dirt. Even while bleeding out, Sota can only think that this guy is completely unhinged. He has to get up. He has to back up his captain. But as he tries to push himself up, Sukaku stops him, saying there's no need. Sota is completely lost. Sukaku's explanation is chilling. He knows that man better than anyone, because for the longest time he was that man. He reveals he's been searching for a place to die ever since the day he let Kichiro fall. The confession hits Sota like a physical blow. He makes it crystal clear he was the one who let Kichiro Sota's own father die. The silence in the room suddenly feels 1,000 times heavier. Then he looks Sota dead in the eye, his gaze asking the one question that matters. Do you still want to save a monster like me?